consideration of reportable action. Mr. Ross?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public, the council convened an open session at 4:33 p.m. To ascertain if there are any public comments on the matters agendized for closed session consideration. There were none. You adjourned to closed session at 4:33 p.m. and concluded at 5:56 p.m. With respect to both the specifically all agendized matters in closed session, I will do a written report upon return from closed session consistent with the provisions of Government Code Section 5497.1. That would conclude the report unless there are questions.
Are there any questions from council members?
No, sir.
Seeing none here on. Thank you, Mr. Ross. We'll move on. Moving on to proclamations and presentations. Para todos aquí, bienvenidos. Tengo mucho gusto para este. So if you would like to assemble over here at the podium, if you have any comments to make, please feel free. City of American Canyon Proclamation. Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month, known as Mes de Herencia Hispana, is celebrated nationwide from September 15 through October 15 each year. The observation started in 1968 as Hispanic Week and was expanded by President Ronald Reagan in 1988 to cover the month at which it's celebrated today. Understanding that September 15th is significant because it is the anniversary of the independence of Latin American countries, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua. In addition, Mexico and Chile celebrate their independence on September 16th and 18th, respectively. And whereas the City of American Canyon looks forward to celebrating Mes de Herencia Hispana, highlighting the rich heritage, arts, history, food, music, traditions of all 26 plus Latin American nations, while recognizing that these nations are not monogamous, and this month celebrates, honors, and pays tributes to all their contributions to our city and our community. Whereas the City of American Canyon has a long history of welcoming immigrants and is home to a growing multi-ethnic, multicultural Latino population, all of whom are welcome and very much appreciated. And whereas the diverse Latino population of American Canyon makes a significant economic contribution and has other profound positive influences on our community through their strong commitment to family, faith, education, hard work, culture, and service. And whereas this community thrives on the diversity and ingenuity of all people and depends on the continued support and success of our diverse Latino population, and we will continue to be enriched by the transcultural contributions of our Latino friends and neighbors for many decades to come. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Leon Garcia, Alcalde Leon Garcia, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim September 15 through October 15, 2023 is Hispanic Heritage Month, Mes de Herencia Hispana, in the City of American Canyon. Thank you. Would like to come to the podium and make a comment? I have some proclamations. I made copies for people, so. I see, well, we started this morning with Cecilia's hair salon, and then we have Angelica from Dos Botellos, Senor Santana from Tacos Zacatecas, Mi Zacatecas. Yeah, what else we have? I'm singing in the background. Billy Rodriguez. Very good. Okay, I got to turn the mic on and pull the mic down closer to you.
Like this one? Yeah, okay,
yes.
thanks. Well, I guess I'm the bravest, but I just want to thank Mayor Leon Garcia for coming into the salon and inviting me tonight. And we are very happy to represent all the Latino community here in American Canyon. we are blessed to live in such a city with diverse community, and we love everybody. I love that when the First Lady came and gave me the big heart, where we are love everybody. So I am blessed to be here. God bless you.
Thank you. I notice also we have Victor, what was his name? No, Valencia. Custom T-shirts. Thank you. Bienvenido. Anybody else?
Hola, mi nombre es Héctor Valencia. Soy dueño de Custom Teacher in Science in American Canyon, and I'm going to speak in Spanish.
Go ahead.
Pero,
Está bien.
me siento muy agradecido de ver de esta ciudad porque yo vengo de Vallejo, pero todos mis días la paso en esta ciudad. Aquí pongo mis taxis, aquí gasto todo, aquí comemos, aquí tengo nuestros hijos en la escuela. Y he conocido muchísima gente aquí muy buena, me gusta la seguridad de esta ciudad. Mis hijos están muy seguros aquí.
Seguro, sí.
Y les doy las gracias por esta oportunidad, por invitarnos. He conocido a muchos de ustedes. Gracias a esta comunidad me ha abrazado mucho a mí y a mi familia, y les doy las gracias por esto. Gracias.
Gracias, señor. Oh, just that one. Okay. Next speaker, please. Yeah, yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Billy Rodriguez from Rancho Uva Blanca Family Wines here in American Canyon. I want to say thank you to Garcia. Thank you so much. We love our city here. I'm from St. Lena, and we moved down here, I would say, almost 25 years ago. And there's no better place than American Canyon. Everyone's so home, just very open. Everyone's so lovely, and just for our kids, our family, and just made a lot more friends. Always, and now my hometown was St. Lena in Napa. Now, to me, American Canyon is my home. And, now we got a couple properties here, and, we're here for a while, and we're going to stay here. And we love it, and whatever we could do to help out our community, that's what we're here for. And we do a couple events a year, and more for Latino culture every year, or, dancing horses that we have here in the valley. That we used to do them in St. Lena, Napa, and now we do it in American Canyon. So Rancho Uva Blanca Family Wines is your home, and you guys are always welcome to, we're here to help out our community for whatever we need. So thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, and we're
Gracias.
blessed to be here.
gracias. Mis Zacatecas?
Hello, everybody. Yes, my name is Santana Saldivar, and I'm from the Zacatecas Mexican restaurant. And I've been here in American Canyon for 21 years. And originally, I was from Sonoma, so I moved here, and I'm very happy to be here. And I know lots of people, most of most of everybody. So thanks very much.
Thank you, gracias. Yeah, I think you opened your restaurant about the time Canyon Plaza opened up. Very good. Angelica. Por favor, venga, venga. Eva and I stopped by today to make an invitation to come this evening, and she had a special on chile relleno con camarones. Oh my!
Hello,
We had to go
everyone.
back.
My name is Angelica. I'm the owner at Dos Botellas, Canadian Mexican restaurant here in town. Here in American Canyon for 20 years. And I just opened this place because I know this is a nice community here. I love to be here. All my kids grow up here. And I think I'm not going nowhere. I'm going to stay here forever.
Okay,
So that's me. Thank you.
thank you. Gracias. I see your Sheriff Ortiz here. Do you want to make a comment? One comment? Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just one comment. Our good friend from Custom T-Shirts, he did say that he felt his kids were very safe in American Canyon.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, sir. And it's good to be here as a civilian,
Right, yeah.
as a citizen and a resident of American Canyon.
Well, good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we're going to line up here for a group photo. Everybody, and I have some resolutions to hand out. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Good to see you.
The future, you said? Yeah, yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tacos Michoacán.
The guy you were speaking to with the red shirt, that was his last name.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, that's his dad. No, no. Billy
T-shirt.
Rodriguez. Yeah, yeah.
I actually think I just started doing Duolingo. Spanish. I think it helps. I was just listening to it. I'm like, I think I'm. I was picking up some stuff. I really was.
Did you take Spanish like in high school or anything?
A little bit, yeah, but.
Yeah, it's a long time.
But I was like, oh my God, I think it's working.
Before I worked here, I worked for Mount Diablo in Concord, and I was at Boys Elementary School. I learned a ton of Spanish when I was working there, but now I've been here so long, I don't, like, I can understand some things, but, yeah. If I was still there, I'd probably be fluent. But it's the using it too is the thing, to find somebody who.
Thank you, council. We'll continue with our meeting. When we think of diversity in the Latino community, I've met people from Argentina, from Panama, and the other evening, Dominican Republic. So the Spanish-speaking world is very represented in American Canyon. Have we received any public comments on items not on the agenda?
We have not.
Anybody in the audience want to speak on an item not on the agenda?
I
Frank?
just have a quick question. It's with the garbage. Since we've been putting it into the can, the waste can,
Green can?
yeah, I don't have any kind of yard waste. And so I've been putting it in that big can, and now I have a lot of bugs.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of gnats, and they're in the house. And I'm just wondering, is there something that we could do to prevent that? And that big can is really hard for me to carry it out when there's only just a little bit in the bottom of it. So I don't know, it's just, I like the concept of what we're doing. I just don't know if there's a better way to do it.
I think that might be a question for Recology, our provider, Mr. Hawley.
I think they're closed
into that.
for a couple of days.
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me get in touch with Derek at Recology and see if we can't come up with some ideas or some suggestions for you. I know I put some of those wastes in a brown paper sack, so I collect the compost and then I put it in. I have a paper sacks, like the kind of you can get them at Walmart or other places, and then I put it into the container, and I find that keeps it from being as messy because it doesn't break down as quickly, at least not in the week, so.
In a paper bag.
Yeah, paper bag.
I was putting it in a plastic bag, but then I'd empty it, and it's still messy. I'll try the paper
I
bag.
put it in a paper bag. And,
Okay.
And then that's biodegradable too. So I find
Might
that
help.
cuts down on some of the mess. Yeah, but that
It's
still
something that-
doesn't help the heavy trash can.
They have suggested that anything compostable, like a paper bag. Early on, they mentioned if you can save a spot in your freezer to put your organic waste in it, and then on trash day, just take it out. That might be another way to reduce the number of maggots. So, yeah, but I hear what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
One other possibility, if Recology is interested in providing like a 60-gallon yard waste instead of the 90.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I'll ask Derek if there's a mini-me version of the brown ones, or the green ones, I mean.
Okay. Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none, seeing none.
Mayor Garcia, I do have online.
Okay.
Okay, let me. I have Justin Hamilton Hole. Go ahead, Justin.
Good
Hi,
evening.
Teresa. Hi, guys. Everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
My two thing is, the one is at the new house for 4 by house. It's still on sale, but I want to see when it can get that hill update. If we can just put new sidewalk in there. Weston Karen Dunmore. The other one is I want to see we need to update a new track over by Dawson Way.
Sorry, say that part again, please.
Baseball area.
I
That's
didn't
my
get the last
comment.
part of that.
Mhm.
Would you repeat it, please?
You hear me?
Yeah, if you could turn up the volume a little bit where we need to do that.
Okay. Well, my number 2 is I want to see if we can do something about that track over at Dawson Way, over by the baseball area.
Oh, okay.
And then the last thing is the new house at the West Karen Dunmore still has cell sign out, and we need the sidewalk in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
There are no other hands raised.
Okay. Okay, that's this public comment on items not on the agenda. So we'll close public comment on that right now. We'll move on to any agenda changes, council. If there are none, I'll accept the motion to accept the consent calendar.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion second. Roll call, please.
Sorry. You guys are quick. I gotta catch up here. Councilmember Abadamas?
Yes.
Councilmember Joseph?
Yes.
Councilmember Oro?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, council. Move on now to our next item, public hearing notification, ordinance amendment, and discretionary project site posting policy.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Cooper.
All right, thank you, Mayor and council members and members of the public and at home. Brent Cooper, Community Development Director, and pleased to present to you proposed public hearing ordinance procedure and sign ordinance change. So we had a workshop on this subject back in October last year, and so this is a follow-up to that based on the City Council's direction. At that time, we talked about increasing hard copy letters to inform property owners that there's a public hearing on their property, and this would be a way to expand the number of people that receive it from 300 feet from the property where the application is to 500 feet. And so at that time in October, the City Council directed staff to revise our ordinance to increase that distance radius. A second part is more of a policy issue, and that would be to require applicants to post a sign on their property that informs anybody that passes by that there's an application proposed to the city, and it would have information on there to describe the project and ways that they can communicate with the city and provide their input. And the goal here is to get input early in the process so that we have time to talk things through and kind of modify the project or educate, whatever the case may be. And so we've been to the Planning Commission last month with both of these ideas, and I'll have some feedback for you on that. These are just two ways in which we reach out to the community. We have a whole lot of others I want to just talk about. I would give the credit for this largely rests with our communications manager team. And in my department, Nicole Hall, they've been working really hard and have really expanded ways in which people can stay in touch and then reach out to us to tell us what they think about projects and really get a dialogue going. And so there's been a lot of work in this regard. Kind of want to share some of it. The effort, though, to reach out has been going on for many, many years. To the right here, which I know in the audience you can't read, but it's an image of a resolution adopted by the council about 13 years ago. And this has a component that's related to outreach, and it encourages applicants to reach out to their neighbors before they submit their application, and just inform them, neighbor to neighbor, hey, I have an idea for my property, what do you think? That really is in tune with American Canyon's values of neighbors working with neighbors. People prefer to hear, I'm sure, from their neighbor before they get to hear from City Hall. And so this is a resolution that was adopted back in 2010, and it encourages applicants to reach out. On the left here, we have a screenshot from our website. We work really closely with Public Works. They too have a lot of projects throughout the city, and so we have a combined effort here. It's an interactive map on our website that shows Public Works projects and development projects in the city. It's quite an effort to keep up to date, but it's a really handy tool. We also have GovDelivery. People can sign up for free to receive information on a host of items, and those that have signed up to receive notifications from the Community Development Department are about 3,800 in number. And so we are sending people information all the time. It's a great way to stay informed. We also do a monthly update in our department. We have a status update on every discretionary project that we're reviewing. We also have a section in there for projects that are under construction, another one for policy issues that we're working on, like zoning amendments and the general plan. And I even have some section in there on some of the collaborative projects we have with our county partners, like the NVTA, on some of their projects. So this is updated monthly. It's on our website, and it's a standing item on our Planning Commission, where I just talk about some of the highlights. Our communications team through the city manager's office works very closely with Trepepi Smith. That's really great having that professional assistance, and they assist the overall strategy for reaching out in town here with communication, graphic design, marketing support systems. And so in the Community Development Department, we really are working within a context of the overall citywide strategy, because it's not all the departments here in some way have an outreach component. This strategy includes posts that go on Facebook, on Nextdoor. The city manager's update includes things related to community development from time to time. And then the Community Development Department itself has a newsletter called Around Town. When we have a development application, I mentioned that we have quite a lot of ways in which we reach out. Here is just an example of a recent project that came to the City Council for the Promontory subdivision in Watson Ranch. We post items on the website. We notify property owners near the property. We announce the project application on GovDelivery and to neighbors. When there's a public hearing, we do a notice to neighbors. It's on GovDelivery. It's posted in the newspaper. We post it on the website. There's a lot of ways in which we're constantly informing people that we have a project, and each of these, where there is either a letter or there is an electronic communication, includes a link where people can provide us their comments. And so when we get those comments, we make a point of responding to everyone we get, and then we share our response and the comments with our decision makers, like the Planning Commission and the City Council. Most of these that are listed here are not things that's required by code. The ones with the asterisk are, and that would be the public hearing notice mailed to property owners near the project and publishing in the newspaper. But apart from that, there are a lot of things that we do that is just practice and policy, and so there's a lot of ways that we reach out, and it's not all just required. It's because it's something that we all have endeavored to do and has been a council priority for a long time. So kind of getting back again to what we're here to talk about, the question that we had is, there is a 300-foot requirement to notify property owners, and you might say, well, where did that come from? It actually comes from state law. It's in the government code, and a lot of times it's kind of a safe harbor idea is to make sure that you comply with state law. That's very important. And so state law really dictates what our rules are today. We can go beyond that, but if you're wondering how we got here in the first place, it really mirrors what's required in state law. Back in October, we look at what might be the impact of just an example of notifying neighbors within a project. I have a map here with a red star. We did have a pre-application for a project there, and we did a workshop with the Planning Commission on that issue. And so among all the things that we do, we had sent out notices, hard copies, to those within 300 feet. And so this is showing that within 300 feet, it includes all the properties that are in that area. And in this case, it was 16 parcels. And so presumably 16 property owners got notification who receive it in that manner. The idea is perhaps we should go a little wider. And so we looked at it at 500 feet. There are some cities in Napa County that have 500 feet. If you do that, you've increased your distance not by double, but you've tripled the number of parcels that you capture with that. And so just going from 300 feet to 500 feet really does include a much wider range of people that might receive notification. If we go to 1,000 feet, which is obviously double than 500, it's more than 3 times the parcels. So there's perhaps a diminishing returns as you get bigger and bigger and bigger. Presumably as you get more distant from the project, people who live on the more periphery might not be so interested. So there's kind of a balancing act as to what's that right number. So in this case, the City Council had given staff to increase the radius to 500 feet. And so today in the ordinance that's proposed for you, that's just what the change has done. I'd mentioned that we went to the Planning Commission in its August meeting. We had a couple of speakers there, provided great input. The recommendation from the Planning Commission is to adopt the ordinance as proposed, plus increasing the notification to not only just property owners, but tenants. So there's a lot of people, tenants are people too. They live here, they participate in our society, and they're equal in every other way. And so that's it's a value, I think it's important. And so the ordinance as proposed includes notification not only to property owners, but to tenants as well. So one of the consequences, which I think we're all willing to bear, is that there may be some people who receive 2 notices. They live in their home, they're a property owner, they get that one. They happen to be within 300 or 500 feet, they get one that too. So some people might get 2. I think we're probably all okay with that, just guessing. And that really ensures that everybody, both property owners and tenants, receiving notification. The Planning Commission had a recommendation for the council to consider. I think they feel that 500 feet may be insufficient, although they didn't provide a broader number, but they did like to suggest that the council consider at some point in the future maybe a wider range than 500 feet. So moving on to the second issue, on-site signs, we talked about this. So we have an example here from Temecula, the wine country in the south. And their signs, interestingly enough, is a public hearing notice. Public hearing notices occur 10 days before the meeting. That's not much time for someone to know about something and to have any meaningful effect. Our suggestion is when the project application is soon after it's submitted. So we have a little different idea on how to do things. I think it's better to have the sign up once the project is submitted. And so we have some examples that we drew from large, sophisticated cities that have a history of robust public outreach and have the resources and the time to really think it through. And so I have an example here of the city of Seattle. Apparently they've just recently updated their on-site sign requirements, and so I have a picture of one here. If you look at it, you see that it's in bold language. It's a 7-story building, so that's very clear what it's being proposed. They have a picture here of the location. Obviously, the building there is much more than 7 stories, so I think it's just a picture of what's there today. They have a site plan. They have who to contact. They have descriptions about the project. So there's a lot of information here that somebody could find out if they wanted to. Another example here is the city of Vancouver, Canada. They have in very bold letters, rezoning applications, so you can clearly see the nature of what's proposed. Much like Seattle, they have a picture. This one is of the project itself, site plan, where to contact, details of the project. Seems to be common information. City of Toronto, they have similar in that the information's available, arranged a little bit differently on on the sign. There's changes proposed. Here's a summary for information and to tell us what you think. And that's something that we want to do as well. And they have the QR codes that we've instituted recently on a lot of our documents. They have icons to sort of catch your eye on different key features of the project, picture. So you can sort of see some similarities among all these three. And so we drafted together a proposed template for a sign in American Canyon, kind of looking at all of these three combinations. And so we have it here. We have a picture of the project. We have the project manager, the city, the applicant. The nature of what the project is, parking, height, use, ways in which they can communicate with the city by mail, QR code that directs them to the email, or in person. There is a place on here on the right-hand side in person where we could update the sign for the public hearing notice and say what the date that is when the in-person meeting is. So that's what was proposed, and we talked about that at the Planning Commission. And so in hand with this is a policy on how you administer signs. So as you can see, even perhaps the most attractive sign can be defaced with graffiti. And so it's reasonable to assume that could happen here. So the policy has maintenance requirements. If there's graffiti, we inform the applicant. They have a certain time in which to either remove or replace the graffiti with a new sign. The size of the sign, getting the height limit, the materials, where to post it on the property, how far to put from the city, what content it needs, when to remove the sign. In this case, we're proposing when the project's approved, either where it's denied or withdrawn. And this gets some consistency among the signs so that we're all satisfied that when there is a sign there, it says what we think people should know and not things perhaps we don't want them to know. If there's opinions on there or whatever. But this provides information here. The Planning Commission also suggested that when the sign is drafted up, that the applicant send us a check just to make sure that it meets the standards before they go to the expense of having it printed. So along with the sign itself, we have a policy to go with that that explains what our expectations are to inform people, enable them to participate. So the Planning Commission, in its review, recommends the posting policy, and then they had some additional recommendations as well. I'll go over each of them. They weren't crazy, perhaps, about the aesthetics about the sign and thought that might need some additional look at. They thought that apart from the signs itself, the city should explore additional social media platforms for outreach. The applicant the Planning Commission suggested that there be a sign all the way through construction of a project. This sign is intended for informing someone that we have an application for discretionary review. There could be, once that's decided, there could be several years before it's constructed. Not always, but could be. But you can imagine a sign going away, a property is empty, and then suddenly there's construction, everyone's forgotten. So there's some definitely a point to be made there. And then consistent with the council resolution, the Planning Commission really wanted to be sure that applicants are doing their part to reach out to neighbors and ask staff to make sure that they do that. And that is something that we do, but it's perhaps more that we could do with support from the council. So going through each of these things, with respect to aesthetics, I think we have sign fabrication companies. That's their business. I think that would be great to get their feedback on what they think about legibility, perhaps aesthetics as well. And then also our Trippi Smith consultants perhaps could weigh in as well and get some professional review to see that looks nicer or be easier to read. Maintaining the sign until the project's complete. As I explained to the Planning Commission, I wouldn't suggest this particular sign be left all the way through construction. If for no other reason than if it's a couple of years, the sign would fall into disrepair, maybe it falls over, we kind of forget about it. But it also suggests that we're looking for feedback on a decision to be made. Well, once the decision is made, it would be misleading to get information from people suggesting what they think about it. The decision is made. So I think there's value in informing somebody that something will be built. So it's a little different message than what we have here. So that is something that we may not have to decide tonight, but I think it's definitely something worth thinking about. And certainly as we are constantly looking at further outreach through our consultant team and our communications team, this could be something that could be discussed, and we could perhaps bring something back to you. With respect to websites, we do use Nextdoor and Facebook to post informational items from the city, and this is another issue that we could talk about with our communications team because we do work in a larger context. I do know that they're working on a major website update, and that's really the mothership of information and the hub of which all of this information is drawn to. And so that's definitely, I think, the way in which we can look at ways to see whether there are perhaps additional ways in which we can use the current social media we have, or maybe there are other platforms as well that are worthwhile using. On working with applicants to conduct outreach, the resolution that the council did adopt, this was 13 years ago, it doesn't require, it suggests applicant do it, so it's a suggestion, not a mandatory. We do share this resolution with applicants, and we do ask them to reach out. It is generally left to the applicant to decide the way in which they do it, so some are more enthusiastic perhaps than others. So there's some inconsistency maybe with what happens through that process. Perhaps that's another thing we could talk about tightening up on if we've gone a number of years and maybe there's a higher expectation. So staff can certainly work with our communications team and think about ways in which we could standardize this effort to get more consistency and better results from that. Coming up to the end here, we always look at our California Environmental Quality Act. This is exempt from that. And then also at the Planning Commission meeting, I sort of threw this in here as just a placeholder. The question was whether or not the on-site signs required by the city for applicants to place would require a sign ordinance modification. We looked that up, and there is a section in the sign ordinance where any sign that the government requires others to place or places itself for informational purposes is exempt from the sign ordinance itself. So I think we've kind of covered that base there. The policy will address the standards and requirements for the sign. It doesn't require an amendment to the sign ordinance. Just our timeline, of course, we were at the Planning Commission in August. We're here tonight, September 5th. The resolution, if it's adopted for the on-site signs, would be effective once the council makes an affirmative vote. On the 500-foot radius, that's an ordinance. So it would require a second reading. If it were approved tonight, a second reading would occur at your next meeting on September 19th, and then an ordinance takes effect 30 days later, so that would put us at October 19th. So with that, just a simple recommendation, just to mirror the staff report to approve the public hearing noise notice ordinance, and then secondly, adopt a resolution to approve a discretionary project posting policy. And with that, glad to answer your questions.
Any clarifying questions needed from council? Seeing none, hear none. Council ready for public hearing? Public hearing on this matter is now open.
Beth Marcus, I just want to say thank you, Brent, for this, because I know I was one of the people within the 300, 500-foot thing a couple times, and it was a little annoying, and so we brought it up to Brent, and I think this is great. I mean, this is wonderful, because now it goes beyond the 500 feet, actually. I mean, anybody can see what's being built. If you have a question, you can contact City Hall. I mean, I don't know how many times on Nextdoor you hear people saying, what's going on here? What's going on there? You know, luckily I come to the meetings and I know what's going on. I keep telling people, come to the meetings and you'll know what's going on. But I want to compliment you. I think it's a great thing, and thank you so much for doing that. And sorry for all the past.
Thank you. Any other public wanting to comment? Anybody online?
There is not.
Thank you very much. There's nobody else wishing to comment on this from the public. Public hearing is now closed. We'll return to county council for further discussion, desired action. With that, Vice Mayor Washington.
Yes, Brent, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. Also, it seems like you and staff and the communication and the planning commission all have heard what the council recommended and have touched every area. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that we didn't have very many comments on our end because you've addressed everything. So just want to say thank you to you, the planning commission, and the communication team. Excellent job. Thank you.
It's great when we're all on the same page. I think we are all looking for the same goal, and so, you know, many hands make light work.
Yes, we do. With that, Councilmember Oro.
Thank you. Just have a couple of questions and comments. Some clarifying, some comments, some opinions. If I heard you correctly, and I think I did this, there is a way to sign up on the city website for all development notices throughout the city, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I was wondering why I was getting a lot more. I think I signed up for that because I was getting stuff way beyond my normal area. So if I live on the southeast corner and I see something on the northwest corner, I can get that if I sign up for all of those things.
That's correct. You can sign up for notification of a project submittal, the project being ready for public hearing. Nicole even sends a reminder of a public hearing notice. There's a lot of reminders.
Yeah. Then examples there that you saw in the signs. I really love the Toronto sign. You know, I thought it was aesthetically pleasing and it was also clear to understand too. So just looking through those, and I gotta say, Toronto's a top-notch city. Been there a couple of times. It's a really cool place. Being Canadian, you would appreciate that too, I'm sure. Then two more questions, and then the last one's about the Planning Commission and their recommendation. This next question is: how much of a burden actually is this? Will the city provide a template for applicants to easily fill? I mean, can you complete it online? Like, if you're going to drop a rendering of a photo, how do you guys think you might implement this, or how are you doing it now, and what will you do differently?
Jen Kenzenbach has reached out to sign companies, and we'll have a template that's designed, that's electronic, that can be sent over to any sign company, and then they can fabricate it from there.
Okay. But the applicant will always be filling in that information with approval from the city, or?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. And so this is just a small step in terms of notification. There's no, they're probably filling this out, will they be filling this out on their application, I suppose?
Sure, we could. It's going to be available electronically, so we'll have, there could be information that we'll have on here, for example, ways in which to communicate to the city. So there could be standard information or already on here.
Yeah.
And then they can fill in the rest.
Okay.
There isn't a lot that we couldn't figure out ourselves either.
Okay. Then the final question was about the Planning Commission. You mentioned that they recommended that we revisit to expand it beyond 500 feet in the near future. Why didn't they make that recommendation today? Can you talk to us about those discussions and deliberations?
I don't know why they didn't come up with an exact number. There was feedback in public comment that there should be director discretion to expand the radius depending upon the impact to residents. My response to that is what someone might think is an impact is individual. And so leaving that decision to the director leaves others out that may think differently. And the applicant who would look at the code and say, well, you have this standard, but for me, it's more. Why is that? Because I think my project's the best thing since sliced bread. So if you're expanding it because there's greater impact, which you perhaps are perceiving are bad, then why are you thinking that my project is bad? Now, you've biased the staff. So there are a lot of potential downsides to having, I'll say, an elastic or variable public notice radius based upon an individual's opinion. I think we really want to move to standards and fairness. There are many ways in which people can be informed if they want to know about a project. And so just that would be something that I would argue is not a good policy decision. The Planning Commission landed on, we think there should be more. I can explore what that means exactly with the Planning Commission further. Perhaps they're thinking that we could have a greater look at what might be a more appropriate, wider boundary. I don't think they were necessarily agreeing it should be variable. So we can certainly explore that issue further with the Planning Commission.
Listen, I think we're beyond state mandates now, and we're actually meeting a need. I don't think we need to go back and revisit or extend this resolution. I was curious to know that. We are 200 feet above the state recommendation. We are doubling, in the example you showed, the amount of people that are there. 1,000 people, 1,000 feet adds a lot more properties that are probably far away and not impacted. And I think the goal for this whole thing was to notify more people in the immediate area. And I think I could agree that 500 feet is appropriate. If people are that concerned with impacts in the city, they can do what I do, which is get a notification for the whole city if they wanted that. So we have that option as well. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Joseph.
Yes, thank you for the report. A couple of quick questions. I'm assuming all of the costs of notification, signage, and all these good things will all be the responsibility of the developer?
That's correct.
Okay, that's a good thing. Second, kind of a picky thing on the discretionary project site posting policy. On the minimum sign content, it lists a number of things, including a map showing the location. And I noticed that's not on the template, and it might be redundant because if that sign is at the site, and you're driving by, the map is right there.
So, gotta know where it is.
Yeah, you should know where it is. So I'm just wondering if that one ought to be deleted or put optional or something, because I think it might be overkill. The last thing is, I think when you look at in totality, sticking with 500 feet makes sense. It's, as Councilmember Oro pointed out, it is beyond the minimum. But when you consider the sign and all the other types of electronic and other connections, I think there's enough overlapping there that we ought to be able to cover, most of the people, recognizing that no matter whatever you do, there will be somebody who says, nobody told me what's going on, and so on. So I think we're doing as well as we can be expected to do. The last one on the old resolution where it's encouraging applicants to reach out, I would agree. I think we've got to go beyond encourage. And I like the idea that the Planning Commission is saying, okay, and let's try to structure that. So I'm not sure if we need to act on that other than to give some additional direction that, yes, we ought to make it a requirement. Yes, there ought to be a little more structure to that so that the applicant knows what they're being required to do so they can do it. But other than that, it's fundamentally a good project. The sign, I think, is a great idea, and I agree that later on you need to have like a construction sign, but not the same one. So thank you very much.
Right. Well, thank you for the presentation. I think there's a great deal of work that's gone into it and thought in terms of making something much better. If you could pull up that map again, please, for 300, 500, 1,000 feet. There we go. Thank you. Usually, impact is, I would think 500 feet sounds very reasonable to me within a property. But if you're going to build an apartment house, that's usually one thing that you get a lot of folks having opinions about. If you're 1,000 feet away, way over on the other end of Rio Del Mar, and it's going to be where the red star is, how much of an impact does that really have on you, other than just visual? If you're living next door to it, yes, I can see that. 500 feet in this map seems to expand it a little bit, but it seems to be reasonable. So I appreciate the work done, and I think good job. Thank you. Council want to reopen public comment? We have someone wants to speak on it.
Yes.
Yes, I just want to make a comment.
I didn't hear back from other council members.
Sure.
Right? You good with that? Very good. Go ahead,
I
please.
just want to make a comment. I received a notice for the paintball, and I know I'm a lot more than 500 feet away. So I was surprised when I got a notice about the paintball, but it's good to be notified. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll close public comment now. All right. So, council, if there's no other further questions of Mr. Cooper, this is an action item.
There's no other comments or discussion. We're doing two things tonight, correct?
An ordinance and a resolution.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2023, next in order. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of American Canyon, California, amending American Canyon Municipal Code, ACMC, Chapter 19.40.050, to increase hard copy to property owner and tenant notification from 300 feet to 500 feet of a proposed project location.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Abadamos?
Yes.
Councilmember Joseph?
Yes.
Councilmember Oro?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, council. Next would be a resolution.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2023, next in order, a resolution of the City Council of the City of American Canyon, California, approving a discretionary project site posting policy.
I'll second that. Do we want to amend that to delete the, what is it? It's on page 3 or something.
Location?
Including a map showing the location.
Why would we do that?
It's not on the template, and as we noted, if that sign is at the location, you don't need a map. You're there. So,
Well, I think, for me, a site, on the site, a location is telling you what's going to be coming
Right.
to be built there, right?
right.
I think that's important for people to know, because you're going to have a lot of questions. So that's why I would retain that.
Not the map itself, just it's the map of the location. Seems redundant because the sign is at the location.
Still, I think, I don't know, I'm visualizing it, notice and a map on it. Seemed like it would belong on the site. So we know what we're talking about. I just said my feeling on it.
Yes. Leave it as is.
I was saying
We can leave it
is.
as is. You know,
Wait, who made the motion, David?
David.
Sorry, Councilmember Oro.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to, Councilmember Oro, if you want to keep it as is or revise your motion and then we vote that way.
Exactly where are you talking about?
It's yeah. The minimum sign content, project site posting criteria.
I see. It's
C5.
Yeah. I'm going to make an argument to keep it because if you read it, it says nearby streets and properties. Sometimes you don't know where you are.
Okay. Well,
like there could be, something on the other side, like a park or something like that. So,
yeah, it isn't the end of the world. So, I'll second your motion to leave it as is, even though.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Abadamos? Councilmember Joseph?
Yes.
Councilmember Oro?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, council. Council want to take a little break till Councilmember Oro returns? All right. We'll take a few minutes. Okay. thank you. Thank you for picking up on that.
You didn't need to.
Council's ready. We'll take up the next item. We're on to business. And the first item is Vehicle Miles Traveled, VMT, policy to implement Senate Bill SB 743.
Well, thank you, Mayor, council members, and member of the public, Brent Cooper. I'm glad to present to you a policy to implement a state law called SB 743. And I'm really pleased to have with me tonight Colin Burgett from GHD. This is a very technical issue, and he understands all of it. So,
oh, good.
We have a presentation here. Before he gets into that, maybe I'll explain a little bit about this acronym VMT. It refers to Vehicle Miles Traveled, and the goal here is to work our land use policy so people don't have to drive so much. So if you're not driving as much, then you're traveling fewer vehicle miles. So the big picture goal is to do three things, which the city has been doing very, very well for a long time and will continue to do that. And one of them is, and they're all related to becoming a complete city. And so in being a complete city, ways in which you can reduce your vehicle miles is you have services that are constructed and built near where you live or work. So you don't have to drive so far to get the services you need. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to build housing near the services. So take Watson Ranch, for example. It's our commercial core is along Highway 29, runs north-south. Immediately east of that is Watson Ranch with a whole lot of houses right nearby. So you're building houses near the services. And the same would be true with what's happening on Oat Hill and other residential projects over there by Tractor Supply, the Canyon Ridge Apartments, the Village at Vintage Ranch. These are all ways of putting housing near services. They also make services more feasible because there's more people close by. So the people who are already living here would enjoy perhaps having more services. So, but having all those things, you reduce the number of trips you need to make to get your daily needs. And then the third way is to make it convenient to get around town without having to drive a car. So we have a bicycle plan, we have a pedestrian plan. Erica is working late at night on safety road plans, Vision Zero. You want to have it safe and convenient to not have to drive your car so that you can get to those close by services. So it's a matter of being everything complete and working together. And as we think about that, isn't that just make it a nice place to live?
Oh.
So that's kind of what VMT is all about. The way in which it's analyzed and documented so that we can adopt a policy is where Colin comes in. And so there's a lot of technical analysis that goes into pretty much articulating what I just talked about in terms of a broader concept. So kind of with that, I want to turn it over to Colin, and then we can kind of take it from there.
Thank you, Brent. So again, I'm Colin Burgett with GHT.
Good evening, welcome.
And I'm going to provide some background on SB 743 and also introduce the VMT thresholds. SB 743 changed the way traffic impacts are to be evaluated under CEQA. Previously, the emphasis was to measure traffic delay at intersections, and impacts were identified based on whether or not the corresponding level of service exceeded a certain threshold, and it was based on average seconds of delay. That method eventually started proving unpopular, and so SB 743 required identification of a new method for evaluating traffic impacts, and the method that has been settled upon is VMT. The reasons behind SB 743 are related to, first of all, a whole series of statewide goals related to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and VMT provides a much more direct one-to-one correlation with emissions. With traffic delay at intersections, the original rationale was that also led to emissions, but there's less of a one-to-one correlation there, and the discussion about traffic delay wound up being more about delay to people. And using level of service, in terms of what it resulted was on a facility such as Highway 29, the emphasis to maximize your level of service score, the emphasis on getting people through. Whereas travel within American Canyon, crossing Highway 29, either in a car, bicycle, walking, that wouldn't maximize your level of service score. Level of service winds up emphasizing moving people through. Another related goal is to correct an unintended consequence of CEQA, which was that the emphasis on traffic delay made infill harder to develop. Because you think about it, particularly in places like in San Francisco, where you have very walkable communities and dense neighborhoods, but you also have a certain amount of traffic delay. So the traffic studies would tend to say you're producing all these traffic impacts, even in an area where most people are walking and where the VMT rates are pretty low and the actual rates of emissions are pretty low. Level of service had the unintended effect of showing impacts for traffic impacts for developments and making it harder to actually carry out infill projects. SB 743 aligns the CEQA traffic analysis procedure with those statewide goals relating to greenhouse gas emissions. It'll also simplify approval for bicycle, pedestrian, and transit projects, since in most cases you can simply they simply wind up being exempt now. So some of the factors affecting VMT: your diversity and density of land uses, the mix of residential development and services and local supermarkets. Your transportation street network design, having sidewalks and walkable streets and so forth. Your provision of viable transportation choices, just being able to walk and bicycle and use transit. And then your jobs housing balance. And this image here shows the current jobs housing trend in American Canyon. There's about 4,400 jobs or so, but only about 400 residents work in the city. And there's about over 9,000 residents that work. So that means almost 9,000 residents are commuting out to work. Only 400 are staying in the city to work. And then about 4,000 people are coming into the city. And so the jobs housing balance winds up having a big effect on VMT. Now I should note, this is based on pre-COVID trends. So as people are working at home today, there's less of an effect of, not as many people are commuting out. A certain percentage are working at home. So this resolution includes recommended VMT thresholds for American Canyon. CEQA law left it up to the cities to identify your thresholds. The intent is that whatever criteria and whatever thresholds you choose should promote the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and promote the development of multimodal transportation networks and promote a diversity of land uses. You're not required to adopt thresholds, but adopting thresholds provides clear guidance to staff and developers and so forth. So in terms of how much of a VNT reduction should your threshold aim for, statewide, the California Air Resources Board, known as CARB, about 6 years ago, they had adopted a goal of a 15% statewide reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. There's also some regional thresholds for certain regions and or regional goals for certain regions. The goal for the Bay Area is a 19% reduction by 2035. And so this VMT policy recommends that the threshold be based on aiming for that 19% reduction.
Sorry, what was the acronym MPO?
Oh, MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organizations. So that's, in this case, MTC. So the existing VMT rates in American Canyon for residential uses, 16.6 vehicle miles traveled per resident. So what that means then is for a 3-person household. So this isn't limited to, this isn't on a per driver basis, but per resident. So a 3-person household would generate about 50 miles a day. And then the employment rate, based on commuting from home to work and back, the average is 34 miles per job on a typical weekday. And so the proposed thresholds then would be set at 19% below that. So for residential development, the threshold would be 13.4 per resident. The proposed employment rate would be 27.6 per job. And then in addition to that, certain types of commercial uses, such as retail uses, would also be evaluated based on whether or not they generate a net increase in VMT. And local serving retail generally won't, because a new supermarket comes in and they usually take the customers away from other supermarkets. So they wind up not really generating net increases in VMT. And that can even be the case with regional serving retail. But so if a regional serving retail use came in, there'd be an evaluation as to whether or not that would result in net increase. And then certain types of projects would be screened out altogether. And Brent will talk a little bit more about that.
Great, thanks, Colin. So along with having these thresholds, which make it standardized when there is an environmental review, there are certain types of projects that by definition serve to bring people closer to services and reduce automobile traffic. So just running through some of these, if something is exempt in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, then it's, by definition, it's exempt from VMT analysis. If there's a development agreement, this is a project that's already gone through an analysis, there's a contract per state law that locks in the rules. Any project that has a development agreement is now screened out of having to do a VMT analysis because its entitlement is guaranteed through the development agreement. When we do a program environmental impact report, and this is something that we've been doing for all of our major projects, the environmental analysis is very comprehensive and it sets forward mitigation measures for all the variety of impacts that might happen, including transit and traffic. And so if a project is consistent with an adopted program EIR, then it is screened out of having to do a VMT analysis. In accordance with some of these state agency, there's the Office of Policy and Research. It's from the governor's office. They issued a technical advisory on the VMT subject. And so they've determined that if there's a project near a major transit stop or high-quality transit corridor, then it's exempt from VMT. Unfortunately, we don't have any of those, but maybe someday we will. So it's on the list for that reason. Affordable housing projects, those that accommodate residents earning up to 120% of the Napa County median income is by definition considered less than a significant vehicle VMT analysis. And then local serving retail, that's Colin was referring to, kind of bringing services closer to the people. That's another one. Mixed-use projects, they have a little more of a parsed way in which you look at each component because it could be mixed in a variety of ways, but largely mixing uses enables people to serve their needs even within the project. So that's another one that's an opportunity. Moving on to capital improvement projects, of course, Public Works, they build roads, and roads accommodate many times cars. So there's definitely a potential VMT impact from that, but there are also a lot of things that the Public Works through the capital improvement project does that doesn't do that. And so there's a very long list of those in the staff report. I'm not going to take all your time to go through them all. I've listed 8 of them here, but we're looking at safety improvements, transit improvements, improvements for kind of managing traffic through traffic systems, signaling. There's a lot of work like that that's done to improve our roadways that will help avoid increases in vehicle miles traveled. So much like what we were just talking about, you need to have a kind of policy to implement and administer this program. There could be projects that come to my attention that's not on the list in front of you. And so this policy would give me discretion through our existing policies in the zoning code to make interpretations, say it kind of fits within something that's already listed here. The counterbalance to that is the zoning policy that this refers to has an appeal process to the Planning Commission of the City Council. So I can't just make crazy decisions. If I do, well, then someone can appeal it and serve justice. On the same case with CIP projects, there may be something that comes up that in Erica or the Public Works Director's opinion fits in within the spirit of VMT screen out, and so there's authority for that. And then, of course, we know that the state just can't keep its hands off policy. They're going to make a change. We just know that. We don't know what it is, but they're going to make a change. So when they do, we will be obligated to follow it because it's now state law. So we're sort of looking forward and ahead to the prospect that there could be changes to this VMT policy from the state that comes on high. And so that would enable staff to make that change to the resolution rather than have to come back to you and tell you you have no choice but to say yes. It seems like a waste of time. So this would just enable staff. We would communicate to the council when there are changes, but we could avoid the whole process thing and save your time for other things where we really need your input. So that's kind of a way of being able to administer this so that we're streamlined and we can continue to make efficient, quick decisions based on the latest information. And so we also brought this to the Planning Commission in August, and they recommend approval of the VMT policy as proposed to you tonight. And glad to answer any questions you have.
Yes, could you return to the slide that has the recommendation for reduction in American Canyon? Please, thank you. There it is. Oh, one more. I'm not understanding how they arrived at that number.
Oh, okay. You're referring to the we call the baseline, the number of vehicle miles traveled per resident and employment?
The one on the top, yeah, and then the proposal. How did they come to those numbers?
Maybe I'll call and answer that one for you.
So the technical manner involved the use of the American Canyon travel demand model, which incorporates various data and estimates the average length of trips both within American Canyon, but also well outside the city. And so
how do they arrive at that?
There's various data sources, including census data on average journey length for regional trips. For trips within the city, it's essentially a model estimate of the average distance from a home to different shopping locations within the city. But the biggest generator of VMT are your workers coming in and your workers going out. And
are they tracking all the workers where they live and where they work?
Well, not directly, but the census does provide data on average commute lengths, and then there's also data, cell phone data on average trip lengths in and out of the city.
I know I'm drilling down to it further, but I don't understand this at all, how they arrived at it. Well, so the census provides commute trips. How do they know where people living in the neighborhood work.
Well, we know that 90% of the jobs are filled by people who don't live in the city. And we know that 90% of the workers who live in the city commute out. So, and that's from the census. And we have
They
data.
don't tell us where.
Well, some do if they get a census questionnaire that asks about their journey to work. And so there's that census data, and then like I said, there's now cell phone data that will tell us, what the average distance in. And if we focus on, say, trips coming in at 8 in the morning, those are probably work trips, right?
Yeah.
And then trips going out at 8 similarly.
All right, beginning to understand it a little better. The State Route 37 Policy Committee, I serve on that. And they did have a study once where they looked at where do folks start in the morning using 37. Well, by cell phone, they can say this is from Fairfield. And where does it end up? Well, it ends over here in Petaluma. Where does the other group cell phone starts in Vallejo? Where does that end up? Well, San Rafael or Novato.
Yep.
But it's not real specific in terms of miles. We have a
Right.
decimal point in there, which is a fraction of a mile, but I don't know how that accumulates.
Right, yeah.
Petaluma's a pretty large city in terms of distance in it.
Right, right. Yeah, within a city, it sort of assumes a midpoint. So, for example, for a trip to Napa, it'd probably be a little bit further than downtown, sort of central Napa.
Oh, okay, let's take a look at this. Healthcare providers, was my career for many years. You work at Kaiser Hospital or Sutter Solano in Vallejo, either one of those two. So it's maybe a 10-minute commute. Bad day might be 15. If you work in Napa or Yountville, it's half hour, 45 minutes to an hour. Right. So they collect that type of data?
Well, like I said, there is census data on zip codes of where people are traveling to and from. And so from that, we for example, there were some percentages in terms of how many American Canyon residents work in Vallejo, how many work in Fairfield, and then vice versa, how many American Canyon jobs are filled by people coming from Vacaville.
Okay, so I'm not knowing what the census data asked in terms of, to ask you where do you live and where do you work? Was it that specific?
It depends on what form you get. And now the census is not even just the every 10 years. They do some surveys in intermediate years. So there's 2018 data and different days, different periods of time. But one other note is that these net numbers were also compared to MTC has a model that they use to predict VMT per resident and VMT per job. And also the Solano Napa, there's a Solano Napa model that NVTA and the Solano Transportation Agency maintain. And their numbers are very similar to these numbers in terms of the 34. I think the Solano Napa number might have been 31. And then the 16, Solano Napa was up, I believe it was also 16. So they're very close.
That helps me understand a little better how they arrived at that.
And
because it's not a very precise number, it's more of a best guess.
Well, it's not super precise because you can't really know every trip people take. But another way to think about it is 16.6, if an average household has a little over 3 people, so just presume that's 50 miles a household, that would work out to 18,000 miles a year for home-based trips. Yeah. So you think about how many miles you put on your car in a year. Most people know that, right? They know, and I'll just say, speaking of VMT, I once lived in San Francisco, and I would only put 4,000 miles a year on my car because you could walk everywhere. And then I moved to Dublin, and it's out in the suburbs, and immediately my VMT went up to 15,000 miles in a year. So it's a huge increase just because of different urban form. And,
all right.
And so again, that number works out to about 18,000 miles for a household, but it doesn't include all the miles because it's home-based VMT. So the miles you put on your car would include, maybe you take a trip up to Tahoe, and it's not necessarily all home-based, right?
All right, I'm beginning to understand that part better. How do we arrive at this reduction number?
Well, so that is from some state goals related to greenhouse gas emissions. CARB, the California Air Resource Board, had identified certain targets intended to meet certain greenhouse gas reduction goals by a certain year statewide. And so the statewide goal that was identified about 6 years ago was a 15% reduction statewide. And then a couple years after that, there was a goal for the Bay Area identified that was a 19% reduction. And so a lot of cities had identified a 15% reduction as a threshold, but given that Bay Area goal of a 19% reduction, this resolution recommends that the threshold be 19% below the existing rate.
Thank you. I have more questions, but I'll allow my other council members to weigh in here. Councilmember Oro.
Please come back up because I'm gonna have some more questions here. Listen, I get the exemptions, I get the secret stuff. I generally get the gist of why we're doing this, and what I'm looking at is in it. It's sought to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, right? And I think the level of service before was the wrong way to do it because it's probably like Caltrans thinking, like, just move goods and services through as fast as possible. Damn the environment, let's just go. This is saying, and vehicles mile traveled is trying to promote integrated land uses that facilitate transportation through many forms such as bicycle, walking, transport, and carpooling, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Give me an example of how this would work in real life. Like, how would we apply this and measure this? I'm trying to find an example of an applicant coming to us and saying, here's my VMT, here planning commission, here city council, approve it, the numbers are awesome. I don't understand how that's going to work, and I would love a real life example. Make it up, just make it easy to understand.
Well, as projects,
I can give an example. Councilmember Oro, I can give some examples. We've had a number of projects recently where there have been VMT analysis. We haven't had an adopted standard, so that's it'd be nice if we did, but the standards that were used survived the process, so it worked out fine. But we'll give an example of the residences on Oat Hill. So you have that location is very, very close to services in the city. And so the VMT analysis shows that in higher density housing, you tend to get fewer drivers, and the location itself is very convenient to a lot of services that are available in the city. And then there's accessibility with the new road connection that'll get built, that segment that's not constructed now, so you have pedestrian access. So the development of the project itself generates fewer miles traveled per resident.
Vehicle
just
miles traveled.
because of the way it's configured and located compared to a sprawling single-family resident where you have the example there of the curlicue streets where you got to drive this way and that way and that way to get out. It's much more direct. So,
and this is separate from judging something or measuring something, let's not say judge, measuring something like trip generation for traffic impact fees, right? So we still have, for commercial development, estimated trip generations, and we apply fees to that, correct?
that's correct. Trip generation and trip length are two different metrics that are looking at different aspects of traffic.
If we were to take the Oat Hill example, would we look at trip generation as well and apply traffic impact fees to that?
It is, yes.
And then we're also looking at vehicle miles traveled to measure.
To reduce the distance.
To reduce the distance.
Now,
So the state's intent in this is to create communities that are a little bit denser and use more multimodal aspects so that they're more favorable for approval. What is the intent of all of this?
I think you're really hitting on it. When you look at American Canyon, we have an urban limit line that limits our ability to sprawl. I've heard of a criticism of, I'll just pick on Fresno, where I was told that, they pick up their downtown and they move it 5 miles down the highway and plunk it down there, every so often. So you have these new services, but it doesn't mean that you have to drive less. You've got to go 5 miles down to the latest, outlet mall. So our town is one where the center itself is where the development for services will occur. And that's inherently close to the uses that are already here. And we have an urban limit line that doesn't allow us to pick up a mall and put it down the highway. So the way in which American Canyon is configured and our land use policies, and just luck of geography, having all this opportunity land in the center of town, really lends itself to approving development that will be VMT compliant.
And what you have on the board right now, it is a compliance that we have to hit or try to hit or are mandated to hit.
It will become a required standard to hit. And fortunately, the last projects we have, just because of the way in which the city is growing, is one where it's been accomplishing reducing vehicle miles traveled. What we're doing is we're taking the city as it is today and improving the standard, improving the way and reducing it.
And this is not retroactive, so Watson Ranch doesn't have to meet this standard as they build homes.
It has a development agreement.
As a development agreement. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Joseph.
Yes. Well, I do understand the rationale and all that. I find it amazing that you can figure it out that we're at 16.6 vehicle miles traveled per resident per day, but I will defer to the methodology. My perspective is more, where do we go from here? If we adopt this, we've got a policy, a target, a lot of exemptions, but we don't really have strategies. So what I would like to throw out for my colleagues to consider is to say, after we go beyond this, that we start saying, how do we achieve a reduction in vehicle miles traveled? And quickly in my head, it would be, let's explore local hiring preferences. Let's talk about being able to target affordable housing opportunities for people who actually live here or who actually work here. Anything that brings that job housing balance closer. In one of the screens that had the 3,400 jobs coming in, 400 are here and 9,000 are going out or whatever. That basically is the target, that we need to start changing that dynamic. We need to explore whether we can use the state mandate to legally justify local hiring preferences, or providing preference for locals who live here who need affordable housing opportunities, and so on. We certainly need to explore building out our bike plan, because that facilitates multimodal travel almost definitionally. And then ultimately rethinking land uses. I will throw out the thing that I've thrown out for years. In Watson Ranch, as you move north, you really ought to consider a little neighborhood retail project, because you have 1,200 homes with no retail unless you get out on the highway. So these are all the opportunities that we can start thinking about once we adopt this policy and these targets. But that's where I think we need to start paying attention to. How do you make it happen versus, okay, here's a state mandate that we've adopted, let's move on. So those are the areas I would like to throw out that we put on a future agenda item to start talking about how do we get from where we're at to the 19% reduction. And I don't even want to start into the argument of what if we wanted to get that in 2030, because that's another deadline versus 2035, but now I'm getting into the weeds and a whole different issue. Again, we need to go beyond just adopting this and start looking at strategies to make it happen.
Thank you. Mr. Hawley.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to chime in a couple of things. I think that's a great point from Councilmember Joseph. An example that comes to my mind, Councilmember Oro, of a project would be the warehouse projects over on Commerce. We required, as a part of the project, for them to build out some of the Class 1 bikeway systems. And we used some of that analysis to say people will start using those bikeways to go to and from employment opportunities in the Green Island area. And we know there are residents who bike to work, and we know when we build more trails, the more of that will happen. So the word of the year and of next year is mode shift. And when we talk about mode shift, we're talking about having people get out of their passenger vehicles and into other modes of transportation. Building out the Class 1 network, building out our sidewalks and things is one way that we can do that. And having a policy like this allows us to go towards development and to lean into that development and say, we need help building out our infrastructure. How are you going to be reducing some of those VMTs? So there's an example there of a project in American Canyon that we were able to leverage some VMT analysis and to have some of that network built out. As far as strategies and things, yeah, that's a very important piece of implementing this, and certainly we can bring back something that talks about that. You know, it was, call it 15, 16 years ago when a similar kind of strategy, but for a totally different issue as it relates to water supply. And we ended up with the zero water footprint policy. I'm not suggesting a 0 mile traveled policy, but my point in that is there became a policy, and then we had an implementation strategy around that, and that has yielded some results that have been quite good. So as we look to develop this policy, we could come back with something that says, here's how we're going to implement this in a variety of development aspects, including, again, building out our multimodal transportation networks.
I think one that strategy that I didn't see it show up in the presentation. I saw it earlier this evening somewhere. V-commute is the way. If we can we can encourage people to carpool to get out. It seems to be the most convenient way. Transit's a great opportunity, but it's bus stop to bus stop. V-commute is from your house to your workplace. So it provides a much better model, I think, for a lot of people's uses. The City of American Canyon has always been a commuter community. So a warehouse job pays $25 an hour. That's $50,000 a year. So where are you going to live? Probably rental somewhere, right? If you can afford the rent. And it's not a significant market for employment in our industrial area. There's not that many jobs in a winery warehouse. And forklift operators usually the one that gets the highest pay. One of the wine production areas here is largely, frankly, robotic. They have 7 employees, that's it. So we're not going to build an entire employment base here. One encouraging piece for me is it's come up at the American Canyon Chamber of Commerce meetings, Redwood Credit Union, the new corporate headquarters there at the airport. That's, 5 miles away or so. 700 employees. So they would be at the income level, I would suppose. They could afford a place in American Canyon and a much shorter commute, but we're not there yet. I think part of it is how do we look at our assets and market what we can for industrial corporate employment here locally. That's one way of solving the problem. I'm not, this sounds like something, well, the sword's over our neck, so we have to do something, I guess, is some way to put it. We either work to participate in this or it's going to be mandated. I just like too much stuff that I encounter. Here's what I had trouble with this when I opened it up the first time when I'm reading the agenda. This is a public process, right? How much does the public understand this? You did a fairly good job for me of making it more understandable. So people need to understand what's this mean to them. And it needs to be broken down that way. Sacramento down does not do, in my opinion, a very good job at all, if any at all, sometimes, on what they're trying to accomplish so they can be understood by the voter down at the household level. And it's a failure. And things like this is going to get people really worked up about its impact on them. If you explain it in a way that's understandable, climate change is real. Greenhouse gas reduction has to be done. And we're already feeling the impacts of it all over the place. So we need to implement something that makes sense. If I were explaining this to someone, I would say, look, this is a very broad element based on a lot of what you just told me. Sorry, it was just, that was helpful. And I had some experience with some of that. But what's the penalty for noncompliance with the state? When they get there? We don't know. Yeah. Can we move forward? I would think in the best interest, in good faith, yes. I don't know how do we get below 19%. We don't have a way of measuring that. We won't know till we try. And it has to be, I think, if we move forward with this, best effort to embrace that in a way of seeing how it really works for us. But I don't know, I think it's, I know, I'm sorry, I get frustrated with decisions from Sacramento that are universal to everybody and don't look at the details of its impact. Just do it. What was the Housing Authority? State legislature somehow thinks that they're the final call on it. We've learned differently. Housing Authority thinks they're the final call. With that, Mr. Hawley.
Yeah, just to kind of wrap things up, Mayor, the way that I would simply explain this, we came from a world level of service that engineers had designed, and I'm still currently engineer, recovering engineer, not to disparage engineers, but level of service is an engineering metric, how many seconds of delay at an intersection for a person in a vehicle.
Yeah.
A very prescriptive way of analyzing a effect. And this new VMT analysis is much more how planners of the world would look at it. How are we co-locating things, reducing impacts in a more holistic way? And American Canyon already has a pretty great baseline with the urban limit line, as Brent noted. We already co-locate and closely locate a lot of our stuff. And so we're already in a great position. But this is kind of how planners would look at it as opposed to how engineers would look at it. And that's kind of how I would summarize it.
Well, thanks for that. I just think, again, to start with, describe it in language people can understand. Yeah. Because ultimately they're the ones who are going to feel the impact. Thank you. Okay. Was there any council ready for public comment on the matter?
Yes, sir.
Do we have any public comment? Anybody in the audience? Nope. Okay. Do we have anybody online?
We do not.
Okay. Moving back here in the agenda. Action, we have a VMTCC resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and move resolution number 2023 next in order, a resolution of the City Council of the City of American Canyon, California, approving a citywide policy establishing vehicle miles traveled as a standard of measurement for potential vehicle traffic impacts consistent with the California Environmental Quality Act.
I'll second.
Motion second, roll call, please.
Councilmember Abadamas.
Yes.
Councilmember Joseph.
Yes.
Councilmember Oro.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Yes.
Mayor Garcia.
With a leap of faith, yes. Okay, thank you, council. We have another item here. Computer's slow today. Come on.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay, that's the next item is item number 13. No, sorry. And item 10, support for ACA 13 Ward. Adopt a minute resolution, minute order authorizing the mayor to sign a letter of support for ACA 13 Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. ACA 13 is a piece of legislation currently pending in the legislature. And although the city doesn't have necessarily a legislative platform, what we do is tend to follow what Cal Cities, our professional organization, recommends as guidance. They have the interests of the 483, I think it is, cities in California at heart. And one of the issues they've been bringing to our attention is this particular measure, ACA 13. As staff report notes, the California Constitution has a variety of ways that it can be changed. It's actually been changed more than 500 times since 1849, which I found kind of astounding to learn. Our federal Constitution has only been amended, I think, 27 times, 28 times. So the fact that, and half the time, California's Constitution has been amended 500 times, I found interesting. It's somewhat easy to change the California Constitution. Both the legislature can do it and voters can do it. That's baked into our Constitution. And the way that voters can do it is by one registered voter goes and gets enough signatures from other registered voters, and then it bypasses the legislature and the governor, and their idea then goes on the ballot, and the voters of California vote on the idea. One of the things that we've seen in the past is certain groups have put constitutional amendments together by initiative that have raised the bar for certain types of measures, particularly revenue-raising measures. Proposition 13 is the classic example, but there are others, and many tax thresholds now, many tax measures now are required to have a 2/3 approval rather than a simple majority. As we know, a simple majority is simpler to pass than one that requires a supermajority, or if you were trying to oppose a measure, it's much easier to have a measure fail if it requires 2/3 as opposed to 50% plus one. What ACA 13 does is provide a certain amount of equity as it relates to those measures. And it basically says that if you're going to bring forward something that requires an increased or supermajority type threshold, that original measure has to have been originally approved by something of that higher threshold. Said differently, if you wanted to say, for example, you're not allowed to raise taxes without 2/3 approval anymore, you need to have 2/3 of the people agree to it, not just 50%. Right now, only that 50% number would be required. So it kind of turns the former arguments on their head and has a sort of argument of equal dignity as it relates to these kinds of measures. So CalCities is very much in support of ACA 13 going forward. If it does end up on the ballot, it would be in March of 2024 during the primary. Staff is recommending following CalCities' lead and signing on a letter of support that's shown as attachment 1, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Oro?
The staff report didn't have too much on context and background of why. And I believe this is related to the Business Roundtable and what they're doing. Can you talk a little bit about some initiatives that are being driven and what's behind this urgency?
Sure. I would say it's not a coincidence. There is an initiative that's been circulated and qualified for the ballot in November of 2024. It's known as the California Business Roundtable Initiative that significantly alters the way that tax revenue measures in the future in California can be structured. It will go on the ballot, and that ballot will change how any local government can raise revenue. If American Canyon residents got together and said, gosh, we would like to increase property taxes for a new community center, normally we want to do a general tax, for example. Among the uses would be community centers and some other things. Normally that would take a 50+1. If Business Roundtable is approved, it would take 2/3, a supermajority. So the California Business Roundtable Initiative is qualified for the ballot in November, and it only needs 50% to pass under the way the Constitution is structured right now. And so ACA 13 would change that and would require that CBRT is passed by a 2/3 amount. So it's not a coincidence that this is coming forward. It's been legislation that's been proposed before. This isn't a new idea, but I think the impetus behind it coming now certainly is tied to that. The advocacy efforts and the coalition supporting and opposing this are different. Ironically, one of the largest supporters, I read this, and I forget which article, maybe in the Wall Street Journal, one of the largest supporters of the Business Roundtable Initiative is actually the ambulance company AMR, who happens to be based in Colorado, which seems like a pretty strange supporter of that initiative. But regardless, that's on the ballot for November, and it's, like I said, not a coincidence that this is coming.
So the
March.
plan, so just so we're here, ACA 13 means if you want to pass an initiative that requires 2/3 votes, you have to have 2/3 votes to get that through, and this would be implemented before that ballot is voted on.
It's prospective, correct? And one of the interesting things about
No.
Go ahead, say what you're going to say, because I think there's a potential argument that lawyers will raise about initiative measures on the same ballot.
Yeah, but CBRT is in November, not March. One of the interesting things about CBRT is it's retroactive. It actually goes back to elections back in 2000 and has the potential to undo results from elections 2 cycles ago. Forward. So it's not just prospectively, which seems like a very, very strange. I'd love to have some attorneys explain to me how that's possible, but it has the process to undo both things on the ballot in 24 and in 22. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, and so like things like school bond measures that don't require a 2/3 vote could be retroactively applied to.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
what CBRT says.
Okay, I just wanted the context for that because it wasn't too much in the notes, but also I think it's really good for the public to hear too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Joseph.
Yeah, a quick comment. There's an old saying about what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and I think that applies here. It seems bizarre that a simple majority can amend the Constitution that then requires a 2/3 majority thereafter. So it seems only fair. If you want to do something, you have to maintain that same level. So I certainly can support ACA 13 and hope it will pass.
And just to be clear, if it passes the legislature, ACA 13, that is, all that's doing is putting it on the ballot in March. So it still would have to go to the voters in March.
Yeah.
What we're offering is that we're saying our opinion to the legislature. We think you should pass this bill and put it on the ballot in March. We're not saying they should pass it. We're just saying the voters should have a chance in March to decide it.
Any other comment? Seeing none? Council ready for public comment? Public comment on this matter is now open. Anybody attending wishing to comment? No. Do we have anyone online?
We do not.
Okay, I'll close public comment. We'll return to council now. Further discussion, desired action.
I think the only action is to recommend that we adopt a minute order authoring the mayor to sign a letter of support for ACA 13.
That's correct.
I apologize for the typo. It's authorizing.
Authorizing.
Sorry. I apologize for the typo.
Authorizing, sorry. I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Motion second, roll call, please.
Councilmember Abadamos?
Yes.
Councilmember Joseph?
Yes.
Councilmember Oro?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes, thank you, council. Moving on our agenda, we'll now have management and staff oral reports, Public Work Department quarterly update.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, community of American Canyon. Erica Almond-Smithies, Public Works Director, here to give you an update of what we've completed or on progress of since June of this year.
Right.
Our streets department, street and storm drain department has put on a lot of work in the last 3 months. They are about a third way through with the street name signs replacements. There's been a few comments that I've received as far as some name changes that have gone back to original county naming of streets like Los Altos. Is it Place, Drive, or just Los Altos? And historically, it's Los Altos, for one example. And others, city staff installed the 2 new radar speed signs. One's on Benton Way, implementing the 15 mile per hour, also the 15 mile per hour speed signs that was adopted by ordinance for the speed survey on Benton Way in front of the schools, Aquatic Center. And then a new speed radar sign on Newell Drive in front of American Canyon School, reflecting the 25 mile per hour within the school zone. Restriping of 300 Napa Junction Road parking lot. That's the new recreation community center. Has not been named yet. And then they did some patch paving on Green Island Road, and then they started their storm drain inlet inspections and cleaning this past August. What's not on this list is also combined work that was included with the Parks maintenance team, which was clearing out Broadway. That was a coordinated effort with the police department and fire department because there was concerns about homeless encampments and various fires that have started in the past few months. So it was a great job clearing that area north of Veterans Park across from La Casitas Mobile Home Park. Here's some of the photos of the radar speed signs that were installed. These are smart signs, so they are tracking data at different times of the day that staff can collect via cell coverage, and then we can share with the police department. It's also notable that the police department received 2 mobile unit signs that they can also move around the city at various times. Try to see if they get calls about areas that are in trouble, see if they really are in trouble or if it's perception. The data collected will help guide enforcement. Here's a photo of the restriping of the 300 Napa Junction Road. This work, my kids were campers earlier this year in June, and I first noticed going, there's hardly any parking striping. They got on it so fast I couldn't believe it. And people were using The crosswalk there, the raised speed table in the parking lot to pull out and go back on Napa Junction. So I literally got a call from one of the park coordinators, park recreation coordinators, and city street staff were able to go out there and put the delineators in and stopped that movement of traffic through the crosswalk. It's pedestrian only, so there was cars literally taking out and doing U-E's. So it's interesting, the tiny fixes. We got a few various calls of some residents out around near the city-county limit line, Green Island Road, and staff was out there able to pitch a pretty bad spot out there like it just literally was deteriorated. You can see the before photos and after photos of where the pavement's just gone to dirt. We made contact with the county with areas that are beyond in the county. They said it's just too far gone in some places, but we'll just continue pressure on helping them to help us improve mobility out there. As far as capital projects and construction, we have the recycled water expansion project underway. Wetlands Edge Court was completed. Green Island Road undergrounding's underway. The annual pavement project for this year. The playground replacements and skate park relocation by Director Ikeda taking project management on those. Recycle expansion was 9,000 linear feet. Council contract authorized a new contract award in June. They are, as of today, approximately 70% complete. They got underway mid-July, got the work completed on Benton right before school started, and they're already on Tower Road. So a very efficient team on the job out there. Wetlands Edge Court was just about completed at the last council meeting in June, or the update. It is now completed, and they waited till the week. It wasn't scheduling and getting the slurry seal out there for the restriping. Didn't happen until the week before school started, so I'm glad it all came together, that the timing worked out. That'll be coming to council next week for the, or the next meeting for the acceptance of the project. Green Island Road undergrounding, they're down to the last bit at the end by Paley Loop, and they have some small, they have one site they got to relocate a transformer. We're working that out with the property owner, and they should then almost be 100% complete on that. And then following that, PG&E is under contract with their contractor, where they were still waiting for an encroachment permit up to about a month ago from Caltrans for their portion of it, because they have to get a separate encroachment from Caltrans from the city. But they will follow, and then AT&T, for those who are not familiar with the undergrounding project, AT&T then usually follows about 6 months. They lag behind PG&E. Green Island Road widening construction, we're still on schedule for next spring advertisement. Hoping that all plans out, but so far we're on track. Contract award in June, and then starting that long-awaited project. The skate park relocation, Director Ikeda is leading the project charge on this one with coordination from Public Works. The demolition of the old skate park was completed right before school started on Benton Way, and they are now working on the final design for the skate park at Veterans Park. We met on site with the contractor that will be installing it as part of ARC, and looking good for an October start, September 25th start date. September 23rd? September 23rd start date of breaking ground, so very exciting. Playground replacement completed or almost complete. Another Director Ikeda-led project. They completed the Northampton. Sorry, we don't have the updated slides on here with the photos of the grand ribbon cutting on the last night of Meet in the Streets on August 9th for Northampton. Via Bellagio was completed last week. And then Linwood Park will take place in a month or two, October. So, no. Just the playground equipment. The rubber top, we're still in negotiations or revising the quote that we received earlier this year with them. So the 2022 annual pavement project, that'll be starting in the next week, September 11th. They're starting with the flat work. Project signs are in progress right now from city staff. And this project's doing all of Cookie Hill and the portion of Donaldson Way. There'll be a break at Amarillo just because there's utility work needs to be done there. Excuse me, allergies are really hitting me hard. Between Amarillo to Elliott and then Donaldson Way to the east. But it looks really good for the project to start next week. Capital projects and design. I apologize. Quite a bit on the design calendar, some stuff that still needs to be queued up from our CIP plan for this year. The wetland restoration plan, it's well underway. Our next community outreach meeting will be held October 19th. We will have an update, public outreach happening before then. We also have a meeting with regulatory agencies on October 4th with city staff and the consultant team to walk the sites and see if there's any pitfalls with the proposed feasibility studies that have been completed to date. Benton Way rehabilitation and Sands Crosswalk. That's in the design as we were shared earlier this year. This was paused to wait for the recycled water completion, and that will be scheduled to go out to advertise this next spring in 2024. Melvin Road sidewalk and drainage improvements. I was given word today that the 90% design plans will be coming out. I don't know if anyone on Melvin Road's received any outreach on it yet, but we will be following up with sharing information with the residents on Melvin with the design. It's just, the sidewalk gaps and drainage improvements on there and how it may affect the different properties as we get closer to final design plans. Newell Trail Open Space, we'll be giving an update tomorrow at Open Space and Active Transportation Sustainability Commission. We received 90% plans a couple of weeks ago. We'll be sharing that. Updated estimate currently is about $400,000 construction cost. So that's pretty exciting to see that project move forward. Acquisition is still underway. Stormwater Master Plan, we should be getting some draft model results this September, this month. So crossing our fingers that comes in. We're staying right on time with that one. So it'll tee us up for hopefully CIP projects for next year as necessary. The Wetlands Edge Enhancement Project, this is something that Public Works will be teaming with Parks once again on getting this project rolling again. So we do have a deadline of 2025 for the grant, so we need to get moving on that. SS4 Broadway Sewer Rehabilitation. This one's kind of been paused back for some other projects that are prioritized right now, but this will get moving again and with an anticipated start of advertising in February of next year. Knightsbridge Rehabilitation and Water Main Improvements. This is well under design right now. I don't know if we've received 50% plans yet, but I think they'll be coming soon. But again, this project's staying on track. I know it's a priority for water to get this project done sooner than later, so they're excited to see this be moving too. Rancho Del Mar paving and utility improvements. It's also well underway. We're getting some feedback from residents, seeing the surveyors out on site, collecting information. The one question I received, what about the rest of Rancho Del Mar? So seeing how we can prioritize the next phase of utilities and paving projects to complete this subdivision area, including Amarillo, with the next round, maybe in a couple of years. But that's something we're going to probably try to include in the 5-year CIP update. So if you see that in the, the 5-year pavement rehabilitation, trying to see how we can move the rest of that subdivision up in the city streets. So I'll be all done with that area. Commercial development, it's been a very busy year. I don't want to steal any of Joshua's thunder from the building update, but Canyon Estates, they began in March 21st. They finally got PG&E connected in June. I believe there's one home builder permitted or purchased the site, or design in progress. But it's exciting to see that about complete. Watson Ranch, the backbone is in the final stages. The affordable housing, the occupancy plan for a couple of months from now has now been pushed to December, but it's looking pretty fantastic when you drive out there and see how much more finished it looks. I need to get more updated photos for your next update. The Artisan lots 14 and 15, there are now 40 homes occupied. the Harvest Lot 10 subdivision, about 25 homes were occupied. There was only 8 in June slated to be occupied, so 25 in a few months. They had temporary model homes at first, so. And then Napa Cove Apartments, they began April 4th. They're in progress right now. And I'll let Joshua probably enlighten more on some of the perks he's sharing. And then Home 2 Suites began construction last year, and a lot of progress in the last few months. PG&E, work is still in progress out there on the Green Island Road District. And then Copart, they had a lot of water this year, but they're back out there working again on site. This is at the city limits on Green Island Road. And then Oat Hill, I don't know if you guys have been watching out there, but there's quite a bit of mass grading going on, and I'm just glad that the rain stayed at bay now, because they're keeping in compliance with their stormwater. And then SDG 217, as City Manager Jason Hawley shared earlier, they are working on the construction of the latest industrial building, but they're also working on the trail connection to Wetlands Edge and Eucalyptus Drive. I think they're underway right now, or they're just in coordination with the city staff, but it's exciting to have this project underway. And then We Heart State Streets, we keep pushing this, campaigning for folks to sign up for the, be our ambassadors, help us be better drivers out there and safe for our kids and our families. And that's it for tonight. Any questions?
Thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
My goodness, you've been busy.
Sorry, I'm struggling.
What are you doing on your time off?
Working cows.
No, it's an incredible amount of work being done, and the quality of it, it's amazing. I've gone to, there's a new section of Horton Housing, I think it's Harvest. They had a opening, attended that, and just walking, families coming through. Some are local, actually, are moving up to a larger house or something newer, something of their preference, but that's great to see. Yeah, you answered one of my questions. I had a note to myself wanting an update on what's going on Green Island Road, so thank you for that. So as soon as we get all the utility stuff done, then we're ready for paving, is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, then what's the date look like for that?
Next spring for advertisement, hopefully summer construction. It all hinges on when the utility companies get in and remove the poles, but we're on target right now.
Okay, all right, that's what I was looking for. With respect to the Cove and Melvin, the sidewalks, what's the expected occupancy time for Cove?
Napa Cove? End of the year.
End of the year, and we're starting sidewalks in March. Oh. Yeah, is there, just was wondering if there's a way to look at going, the portion going south, which is less parcels, I guess, to go over. To get down to Donaldson Way. And from there, we already have it fixed to go down if you want to shop at Safeway or Starbucks or kids going to school. So, I don't know, is there a way to divide that project in two pieces? Does that make it quicker to get the?
Well, we're at 90% plans right now. I don't want to promise anything, but it could be under construction by the time they're moving in. But
okay.
If we're getting design plans now, 90% this month, I mean, we'll probably be just either out to bid if they really are looking at a December completion or occupancy.
All right.
There'll be some lag time, but I think about Vintage Ranch. I think some of that was occupied, some of it wasn't. So it could probably be in that kind of circumstance where on-site parking will be okay while we get the project completed.
Real good. Well, Candy Cafe is going to be excited. They're going to have a lot more customers. Thank you for your report.
Well, and I do want to add that this is a lot. I'm just up here talking about this. It's the city staff that's really leading these charges on these projects.
No, my appreciation to everybody who's keeping the stuff moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Oro.
Thank you for the great report and for sharing all that with pictures and updates and everything. Truly appreciated. I think 2024 will be The city bird will be the jackhammer or sort of some sort of tearing some roads up around here. So for the better in the long run. 3 questions. Square footage of the skate park. Does anybody have that number?
Not yet. Come on up, Director Ikeda.
We are in the process of finalizing the new design. Originally, when the project came to you in February, we were going to relocate 80% of the current equipment to Veterans Park, and that's changed. We've gotten feedback from American Ramp Company, and now we're going to go with an all-concrete skate park, and they're trying to finalize the square footage and the design and everything. So once we have that finalized and we have the plans, we haven't even received the plans yet to make sure that everything's going to fit. Hopefully, Erica will receive that soon to be able to look at that because the project's starting fairly quickly. But once we have that final plan, we'll be able to have a better idea of how much square footage it is.
No guesstimate of a square footage?
You.
No. Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
She's the engineer.
Big enough.
Yeah, big enough. Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the largest in the North Bay, honestly.
It's the design. It's going to be fairly similar to what you saw on the screen, but it's going to be all concrete, and it's going to be a double bowl as originally designed, and several other features that were not featured in the last design.
Yeah.
So we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, in Napa City at Kennedy Park, it's 30,000 square feet. So, Green Island Road underground, the holdups, the suspension, you were talking about that. Is it us? Is it the utilities? Is it AT&T?
It's minor. We had to relocate where a transformer was going to go, so we had to negotiate a smaller land acquisition across the road from where it was supposed to go. One of those nuances of when unforeseen.
Okay, so it's an unforeseen thing that is probably the normal course of business, but nobody's dragging their feet on this to where we have to call a representative,
No.
a government rep or something like that. Because I know we had those conversations earlier where utilities were not acting in a timely manner.
This is progressing a lot, like it would a construction project.
Okay. Last one, new open space, the ownership issues you talked about. I forget the word you used, but acquisitions.
Acquisition.
I thought we had taken care of this. Where are we on that?
I'm happy to answer that question. No, we're in the process of acquiring the land we need. Originally, several years ago, there was a concept that we might be able to do a lot line adjustment. In talking with representatives from the land trust, there is no way. A lot line adjustment means we give up land, we get some land. But what that means is land trust gives up land, and they don't do that. So the short version of the story is we can't do a lot line adjustment. We need to do a straight property acquisition. We're working with the property owners who happen to be the same property owners from the Promontory project, and we're working on an acquisition agreement that might fold together some of the acquisitions from the Newell Drive acquisitions and also the Newell Trail, because for them, it's the same property owners, it's the same people. We're seeing if we can't put together a package that meets all those aspects.
Are you feeling comfortable about that?
I don't feel comfortable with anything that we're doing, but it's progressing. It was something that their representative suggested, so I'm hopeful we're able to pull that together. It's pretty complicated, given all the transactions that have happened, but yeah, I imagine if I'm them and I have a project that's approved, I'm in a better mood than when I don't have a project that's approved. So the fact that the suggestion came from them, I'm optimistic. Yes.
So that is supposed to get construction in June of next year. So property acquisition by December 2023 is the goal that you have for that. That's what it says on the slide. Slide is life and truth.
Yes, and I would say that's doable. None of that's anticipating having to do condemnation. So that's why you got a little bit of a look from me, because if it's a friendly acquisition, yes. If we had to go through a condemnation process, no.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Councilmember Abadamos.
I just have a quick question regarding the skate park. And so that's probably Director Ikeda again. I'm sorry. I know you just walked way over there in high heels. Have we been talking to community members about the design? Have we been including them at all? Because I know we had a few that were really strongly advocating to fixed the skate park up and then were really sentimental when it was torn down. So I'm hoping they're included in the design process, at least a little bit.
We've had, I know I've personally had conversations with a couple of local skaters, but I'll let Ms. Victoria Kate.
Okay.
That's true. Yeah, both
Excellent.
Eric and I have been in contact with several of the local community members that are actively involved in the skate park, and they've given some feedback when they originally saw the design plans. I think for them right now, having it be closed for the last year and waiting for it to be built is the most important thing. We've gotten some feedback of some things that they've wanted to see, and I think it's featured in this park. So we're fairly confident that whatever we build out there, they're going to be very happy with. And the fact that it's going to be open and it's not going to be fenced and they can go to it any time of the day is one of the major feedback that we got from them as well. You're welcome.
Councilmember Joseph?
Mainly, I just wanted to say thank you for the report and the updates. And just to confirm on the Melvin sidewalk, that sidewalk is going to be extended all the way to Donaldson, right? So that you have that whole loop?
A couple of missing links on the east side of Donaldson are going to be included with this. And not east side of Donaldson, James Road.
That's
to
true.
Donaldson.
James Road to Donaldson.
There's a couple of spots that are, like segments, short segments, so it makes sense to have that complete loop for safe routes to school in the community.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions from council?
No, sir.
I have. Yes. On Napa Junction Road, I don't know. On Napa Junction Road, there's a sign down. Not on Lombard, excuse me. There's a sign down, and it's the Little League, somebody smashed into it. And it's laying down on the east side of the road. And I don't know if you're aware of it.
I believe you told me about that sign, and I shared with staff, they said that's the Little League sign to fix. So, they were supposed to have received a call last week.
Oh, they're supposed to fix it?
Yes.
Oh, I would have called them. Another thing, the service station is wonderful. And you go down and you see the yellow line, and then it stops. It's too bad you can't make that yellow line all the way down to the end of Lombard.
I believe you're referring to the center line on,
I don't know why they didn't do it when they finished, but they didn't pay for it. They expect the city to do it, I guess.
Well, they're required to go to a certain part or nexus of their project that impacted their project. But local streets, we don't normally include center lines all the way down both sides of the road. Be a lot of striping to replace every year. But something we could, look at.
It's dark down there, and I thought it sure would be nice if that yellow line was all the way down.
That, and no center line's also a natural traffic calming effect because it forces people to share the road. So.
Thank you. Good job.
All right. Any other public comment? Thank you very much for the report. Exciting to see all the great work being done. Your team does an awesome job. Thank you.
Yes, they do.
Next is, where are we? Right. Building Safety Division update.
Right. Thank you, Mayor and council members. This is our first update for you from the Building and Safety Division. And lucky tonight, we'll have our contract building official, Joshua Anderson's here with me. So just a quick overview. Of course, the Building and Safety Division is within the Community Development Department. And the Community Development Department guides the city growth all the way from vision to reality.
Very good. Check it out.
So it really is, it's very broad mandate. We do a lot of great stuff. It's what keeps it always interesting. And so within this continuum from envisioning to reality, we have smack in the middle is the Building and Safety Services. So it's where all the construction happens. Our building division team, we have, of course, Joshua here with me, Tiffany Ford in code enforcement. Tiffany's work is different enough that she'll have her own update for you. But then we have Laura Welch. She's our full-time city employee, grew up in American Canyon. And then Stacy Barker assists her. She's on contract offsite. And the two of them work as a team with Laura, the lead, and they do a great job. I mentioned Nicole Hall and Julianne Gilfus, our administrative support for the Building and Safety Division, and then Curtis and Fred are contract building inspectors, and they do a great job, and they travel a long way to come here to work, and they do that because they tell me they love working in American Canyon, the variety of work and the people that are here, clients, just the environment, they love it. So we're really happy with the team we've got, and they do a great job. Apart from these people alone, we coordinate in a very much, of course, with Public Works and with the fire department, and so it's really a very broad team. Even William in our department does a role in building and safety with checking conditions of approval and doing building inspections for planning conditions and the like. But this is the core team here in the Community Development Department. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Joshua, and he's going to talk a little bit about building and safety services and some of the work that's done.
Good evening. Some of the services we provide as a building department operate around life safety. That is generally the concern, but it's also to educate people on the standards of the minimum standards for construction, which also lead to life safety. If a building's not built correct, then it will fall. And if it falls, are you going to have enough time to exit that building in a manner that will preserve life? Unfortunately, a lot of people consider the building department restrictive in terms of the end goal. But the overall goal of the building department is to help people and educate them on why the need for standard codes is required. Some of those things we do is we update and update building ordinances, but we also update handouts and flyers, which make the process easier, help people have an understanding about the process, whether it's replacing an air conditioner, AC unit, or building a pool, or ADUs. It's to help them, guide them along the way in the building process. Our online processing has made the process a little bit quicker in terms of submitting documents. It used to be a lot of paper and storage and retaining that, but now it's simple. It's a flash drive. You can upload it in a matter of seconds, and then we can process it and route it to plan review or to different departments. The building permit plan check process is to go over and make sure that the documents that have been provided meet the minimum required code that is set forth in the California Building Standards codes. Alternative means and methods. Sometimes we run into, especially a lot of times during the COVID, we ran into things weren't available. I need to install something, but I can't find the product that I've listed. What could I use to do meet the requirement? And so they would come to us, and we would grant them a means and methods to achieve what they want to achieve. We collect and process fees. This helps sustain the building department to do the duty that it is meant to do in enforcing the code. And then we have the building inspection and sign-off portion. This would be the final. After building inspections, we would go through, we would give it an occupancy based on what the intended use of the building or structure is, and then we'd sign it off for final inspection.
So drilling down a bit into the individual responsibilities, we have the building permit review process, which is coordinated by our permit technicians. And my analogy for them is they're like an air traffic controller. we have all these plans that are coming in and taking off, and while they're here, they're being routed, corrections, things are coming in all the time, and they keep it all straight. And, approximately we have about 600 permits a year, and so there's a lot that's going on all the time. So we're really proud of our permit technicians. The sort of, in a nutshell, the process is we get the applications, the permit technician makes sure they're routed, they make sure that the folks that it's sent to prepare comments, it goes to the applicant makes corrections, they resubmit the plan. Sometimes we'll have a project review committee to clarify issues with the applicant, and then eventually the permit's approved, it's stamped, the fees are collected, and it's off to inspections. So Joshua here's going to talk a little bit about the inspection process. We have a couple of typical examples for you, just to give you a sense of the work that's involved.
So on an average residential house, we would have approximately anywhere from 12 to 16 inspections, depending on whether it's an addition, remodel, or a brand new home. But generally, it's about 16 inspections. It starts at the ground level, the foundation inspection, which would we'd check for setbacks to make sure the house is placed in the right location on the property. It would then be the foundations. Then after that would be the slab pour, which we'd look for reinforcement, or in this case, their post tension. So there are cables inside the slabs that they tighten up at the end to strengthen the concrete. We'd move on from there. It'd be frame inspection, but actually it would be shear inspection. So it's not listed, but shear inspection would happen, which is looking at all the structural members, the roof frame, the core of the building, and making sure that it's all been constructed in accordance with the plans and the code. It would move to the frame inspection, which accumulates multiple inspections. It's the exterior cover, the roof, and then electrical, mechanical, plumbing, rough-in of those types of materials. Then it'd be drywall and then finish. All these inspections would happen over the course of time. Right now it's about 6 months on average for a house start to finish up at Harvest and Artisan. But for remodels, this is different. Depends on the type of, how big the type of house is, what they're doing. Sometimes it's inside the frame, so it eliminates inspections. And then also we have your commercial construction generally has more inspections. Bigger scale, underground inspections, more complicated rebar inspections for foundations, for walls, especially with tilt-up panels, things of that nature, steel inspections. But overall, the average inspections for just your standard residential home is usually anywhere 12 to 16 inspections.
Okay. I know that we have a very data-driven council, so I thought I'd share some of the key KPIs, key performance indicators, thank you. Just to kind of get you started, and since we haven't been here before, I wanted to give you some trends. And so here is one where these are the number of building permits that are issued. And generally you can see there's some ups and downs. Some permits are very short in duration to process. Others can take a year or more depending upon the scale of the project and quality of submittals. So we could be working on a variety, but here is, at the end of the day, on these particular years, this is the number of permits that are issued, and you can definitely see a trend upwards. Building inspections kind of follows that similarly. You can see that we've had ups and downs, but generally, lately, they've been increasing. Number of permits that have been completed their final inspection, so the term we use is finaled, and definitely there's a nice smooth trend there you can see. I put fiscal year to date. Our fiscal year begins at the July 1st, so for the first 2 months we're really doing a lot of volume, so you can envision that this year that we're in right now for the fiscal year is also going to be very high in number. We're doing pretty good. I did put the valuation of the construction. This is self-reported by the applicant, so it does do a good trend. And so you can see that I put an estimate because we have so many projects that we expect will complete construction in this fiscal year. And we have a lot of, you can see we have a lot of work that's going on. I have a kind of a year-to-year highlights here for you. So in 2018, we had the wine direct warehouse was the big project. And we also had a lot of very large industrial tenant improvements. We had IKEA, Barry Callebaut Chocolate, Coca-Cola, Mazzetta were all making improvements. And those are very complicated and expensive constructions. It's not new buildings, but with modernizing a lot of the buildings that are here, that too can generate a lot of work and construction valuation. In 2019, the highlight there was the Buzz Oats warehouse. That's the warehouse at the end of Jim Oswalt Way. That was also another big year for industrial improvements. In 2020, we had the Valley View Apartments on Teresa here. We're all very proud of.
Mr. Cooper, what do the dollar signs represent? Thousands of dollars?
That's the construction valuation in millions of dollars.
Millions, okay.
So in 2021, we had the Holy Family Church completion, the SDG 330 warehouse, that's on Commerce Court, and the Napa Logistics warehouse, 400 Boone, there is a very large warehouse. In 2022, we had the Village of Vintage Ranch, townhouses, the Amazon Distribution Center, North Bay Urgent Care, and who could forget the Pick and Pull renovation? The trees look really nice, don't they, that were planted along the highway? Yes. Okay, in 2023, so that's the beginning, you know, from June of 2022 to July of 2023, we did get the Artisan and Harvest at Watson Ranch homes under construction, and then the Circle K was completed. And so coming up right now, that of projects that we expect will be completed within the next fiscal year, we'll have many more Artisan and Harvest single-family homes. We'll expect the Lemos Point Apartments completed, Napa Cove Apartments completed, Home to Suites Hotel is well on its way. The PG&E Regional Center should be completed, and a second warehouse on Commerce Court called SDG 217. And then we have many more big projects. The Oat Hill Homes construction hasn't yet begun. We really haven't seen much in the way of home construction at Canyon Estates. We have the Promontory subdivision, single-family homes with ADUs in Watson Ranch. We have the hotel in Watson Ranch, potentially the Hampton Inn. There's a lot of projects that are yet to come in the way of construction that are going to be bolstering the city's valuation. And this is construction valuation. It's not market value. It doesn't take into consideration land, what the property would be worth when it's sold. There's the entitlement, adds value, utilities, all those things. So this is really just a small portion of a larger valuation picture, but some of the numbers are pretty big anyway. Just looking at Watson Ranch, we kind of talked a bit about that with the last presentation. At least my count, and this changes of course every day, 79 homes have been completed between Artisan and Harvest. And then we have 248 homes under construction. That would be the Lemos Point and Harvest and Artisan. When you take the yet approved for building construction for those two projects, and then you add in the Promontory project, plus the condominiums over at the hotel, we have another 371 homes approved, but not yet under construction or built. And then for purposes of accounting for the overall, accessory dwelling units per state law don't count towards limits, so I just added them as a bonus. So if we look at completed under construction, that's about 25% of the 1,439 homes in Watson Ranch. And we have about 50% almost that's either approved or under construction. So there's certainly been a lot of activity there in Watson Ranch, and we see it, just easy to go and see. Some of the highlights of what our folks we really appreciate are inspecting. Of course, we mentioned the Lemos Point, the Artisan Project. I like to advertise the sensible price to our friends to the north, where homes are much more expensive. Harvest at Watson Ranch, of course. They're all beautiful new single-family homes. Napa Cove, you can see it all taking shape with the exteriors and the colors happening just in the last few days, it seems. Home to Suites, of course, that's well underway. The PG&E Regional Center up there at Napa Logistics Park, and the SDG 217 warehouse. This one here shown is the 330. The 217 will look just like it, but it's off in the distance in that picture. And so those are the active projects. They're all take a lot of work. As Joshua had mentioned, the inspection regimen for all of them is very intensive. So we're really getting a lot of work done. The development project web sources, folks can track these things and stay informed. We mentioned in the earlier presentation about the interactive map together with Public Works on CIP and development projects. We have projects under review. We have a photo and a project description and a link to provide comments. And so we have environmental review documents. We do have a very robust website of information for anyone that's interested in knowing what's going on. So with that, glad to answer any questions you have. And
thank you for the report. A lot of work happening in American Canyon. It's impressive when I have the opportunity to go around and see what's being worked on. Watson Ranch is mostly what I managed to get to. The PG&E Regional Center is, I think I see that from a distance. But yeah, it looks like it's a big project. And then there's another one next to it. That's the SDG. Is that in the same area?
Would be Amazon's next to PG&E.
Well, there's the 400 Boone building. That's Biagi has half of it, and it's leased to somebody else the other half. Oh. And then east of that is the Amazon building.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking this is, well, maybe I'm confusing. It might be looking like it's a separate project, but it's probably PG&E. It's out on the very end of Green Island Road. Yeah. Thank you. Wow. You guys are busy. Wow. That's exciting stuff, though. I think it's, well, I'm so impressed with here. It's, it's build it right. Make it all compliant with what are the current standards, and with recognition of the importance of greenhouse gas reduction. For the conversation earlier today, vehicle miles traveled, right? Yeah. If we have industrial area here, we have workforce here, and we have housing for workforce. So I think all the pieces come together very well for me. Thank you. With that, Councilmember Abadamos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a really quick question, and it's probably kind of silly to you guys, but Joshua had mentioned that there's about between 16 and 18 inspections, and they happen over a course of about 6 months. So when you have a project like Harvest or Artisan and it's multiple houses, do the inspectors show up like day one? They do the entire block of like inspections for the foundation, and then like few weeks later they do the entire block, or is it like one house today, one house tomorrow?
So they'll pull out in batch. So usually it's 4 to 5, and so they're usually on the same street or the same block or same in general vicinity, and they will call out 4. So we'll go out for 4 foundation inspections. We'll go out for 4 frame. So once you get the framing, once you get past your foundations and your slab, those are all can be done at the same time. When they start framing, it's usually one house they'll start, then part of the crew will go to the next one. So those start to stagger now in terms of priority of how the developer wants to build the houses, which one gets first, which one's sold, which one needs to close first, those kind of things. So it does start to stagger out, but it's always in bulk at first. but you will, in time, as they complete frame inspections, having two different artisan and harvest, you end up doing 4 frame, 5 frame inspections because you got 2 over here, 2 over there. And so there is a rhythm. It starts over time where you are constantly doing multiple inspections in a day. You might do 10 different inspections on 10 different houses. So you might do a couple footings, a couple slabs, drywall, a final, like you start to rotate. And so as time has gone on, it has grown that we're probably doing, on average, I would say 10 to 12 inspections every other day.
Wow.
There to make their time schedule. So it's a full-time job to help them. So.
Thank you for
Yep.
Right. Other comment from council? Thank you for the presentation. We look forward to more things getting done. Yes.
Great, thank you.
I really appreciate the fact, given the opportunity we have in American Canyon, we do have that. All right. Let me get back to the calendar here. All right, let's see what's next up here. We have council, mayor council comments, committee reports, and after that, future agenda items.
Mayor, before we get into that, I believe Director Akita may have some updates on some city events and community events.
Oh, very good.
If the council's up for that.
Thank you. So I'm here to tell you all the wonderful things that are happening around American Canyon over the next couple weeks. Tomorrow evening, September 6th, I know I can't believe it's already September, but it is. We have our OSATS meeting starting at 6:30 p.m. On September 7th, there's the Napa Valley Tourism Business Improvement District meeting at 9:30 a.m. here in the City Council chambers. And then on also that day, that evening, if you're up to it, they have karaoke night at the DoubleTree from 6 to 8:30 p.m. And then on September 10th, we have Grandparents' Day out at Community Park 1, and that's going to be from 2 to 4. On 9/11, it's Patriots' Day Remembrance Ceremony at the Public Safety Building on Donaldson Way at 11 a.m. On September 14th, a karaoke night again at the DoubleTree from 6 to 8 p.m. On September 14th, we have our Parks and Community Services Commission meeting at 6:30 p.m. On September 15th, we have live music Friday nights at the DoubleTree from 6 to 8:30 p.m. And then also on the 16th, we have Movie Under the Stars, where they're going to be featuring Grease at the DoubleTree. On September 16th, they have the final sweep event where you are able to drop off. It's a free tire drop-off and paper shredding at the Philip West Aquatic Center parking lot from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then on the 20th is AC's Night Out from 5 to 8 p.m. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the update. A lot of activities going on. Good. Now, Mayor, council committee reports, comments? Councilmember Joseph, anything to add to yours?
No, nothing to add to that, other than to remind everybody, the 8th, is it September 8th? This Saturday is the evening at the Ruins.
Yes.
The 9th, whatever that day.
Please enjoy the event. Okay. Councilmember Oro?
No, I have nothing to report, sir.
Okay. Councilmember Abadamos?
I just wanted to put in a plug real quick for the DoubleTree. They're doing a lot for our community these days in terms of entertainment. And I went to the Movies Under the Stars on the 26th. I just wanted to say it's so much fun. The weather was perfect that night, but in the event that it's not, they have outdoor heaters, they have fire pits, they have a ginormous screen. They've invested in like a new projector, so it's super clear. And you can get a great dinner there too. So I just wanted to put a plug in for them for the next one, for Greece. If you guys haven't been, you should definitely go. And then the Labor Day breakfast yesterday, one of the speakers said something along the lines of, thank your brothers and sisters in labor for getting us to stay off. I think it was Assemblymember Lori Wilson that said that.
So I just wanted to put another shout out there to all of our brothers and sisters in labor who got us an extra day off during the year. And that's all.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to add. Thank you.
Well, I've had a busier month than I anticipated. On the committee assignments, Flood Board had an update on the Napa River, Napa Creek improvements. It's, I think, at that 30% where they're now getting that point where they can present it to the feds and have that back and forth about funding and design finalization. I know Councilmember Joseph also was at the Climate Action Committee, but I think the thing that impressed me, I just don't want to, if you're a data wonk, you wouldn't love one of these things. It's carbon stock update in Napa County. And it's a tremendous working document, things of, as we were mentioning earlier, the way of reducing carbon impact. First off, you got to know where it is, what's the source, and plan accordingly. So that's a document that's going to be more of a reference piece in terms of how we address these types of issues. Had coffee with the principal at Canyon Oaks and some of the families there. Went well. It's always good to check in, see how the school year is going, and how we're managing our traffic circulation around the school. Always an opportunity for improvement. I think they did comment again. They like the addition of the stop signs there at White Oak and the school, the street in front of the school. It was kind of a sad moment. That was it's one of our local residents, Christian Massey, who was had passed away, a young man in our city, and was invited by the family to attend his memorial up in Napa. Those are always very hard, very difficult, but good to remember and hold dear what we value in our community. Had an opportunity for a fundraising event for the Empress Theater. My wife being on a ambassador with the Vallejo Chamber. Anyway, at our table, the conductor of the Empress Theater Symphony, Mr. Thomas Cullen, came over. He's a Grammy Award-winning symphony conductor. He's very interested in the amphitheater. So I would expect we'll get a lot of attention as that moves forward from those who have outside interests like Dale. Exciting one was Vine Trail in Vallejo. The groundbreaking for the piece going from the Vallejo Terminal to American Canyon. That's, of course, going to be a year or two out to get that done, but that has a very significant economic impact of not only Vallejo, but us as well. That tourists coming in on Vallejo Ferry Terminal, for example, can ride, well, now up to American Canyon when that's done. Getting our piece done, as I know segments are being done in Napa and finishing up the one from up to St. Helena is in play. And I think I ran into some of the staff with that, pointed out that's underway. So we are going to have a great opportunity, and as we mentioned in our approval for Watson Ranch, that Vine Trail then becomes the main corridor, commuting corridor for cyclists going to and from work or just enjoying a good ride. American Canyon Chamber had me meet me in the street, appreciation, just a little gathering, which was and a good point to relax and reflect on a huge, huge success in American Canyon. And that was just a great time to take a deep breath and enjoy the moment. But it was. And as Councilmember Albanellis mentioned, and others of us joined the Napa Solano Central Labor Council. That was their 15th annual Labor Day celebration, well attended. The weather committee did a very good job this year. It wasn't not blazing hot like last year. But it's always good to connect. See. Just commenting on Councilmember Joseph's NBTA. I think what really impressed me about that meeting was the Sosol Junction update, that coming together, wrapping up, and it's looking forward to, I don't drive to Napa that much anymore, but as I go up there for the meeting, it's like, wow, this is really coming along. See, on my list was Green Island Road update. Thank you. Got it. Looks great. Well, stay tuned. Had a meeting with, kind of a coffee chat with Joan Bennett. Our connection goes way back. Many years ago, we were on a Napa County Committee for Children, Youth, and Families when there was a lot of gang violence going on. So we addressed a lot of those issues in that. But he's been a resident of American Canyon, I didn't realize, since 1967. It's been a long time. So what her issue was wanting to know about the volunteer recognition ball that we used to do. And I think Councilmember Joseph and I were probably at the initial one they had back, I think it was maybe 2001. And like to, her view was to try to get the organizations re-energized in that, the ones who were principal of putting together. It was a lot of the community organizations in town, service clubs, faith community, and more. And it was, it filled the gym initially. And it was a great evening just to say thank you. And we had a process for nominating the Gateway Award winners. And she'd like the council to see if there's interest in taking that back up again in terms of getting community engaged. And also we talked briefly about our history as a city. I mean, Joan's been here for a long time. Beth, you've been here a long time. Fran, you've been here probably the longest. But some way of being able to record that, however we put it together. I think there's probably a number of venues, but just, if nothing else, writing it down. So we have that as an archive piece that we can reflect upon. I'm thinking, like right now, this meeting tonight, when you're looking at how much building we have done, how much improvement we have done here, things that really put us in a sphere of accomplishment that we have attained. That is really something we should be very proud of and to share with others, and how we did it. I mean, the staff we have are very energetic, and I really appreciate, and I'm sure we all do, that contribution that makes this city just a great place to live and work and recreate. So anyway, that was it. So future agenda item, I don't know how we would put that on a future agenda item, but I think we need to have a discussion about that somehow.
Mr. Mayor, we know on September 18th, I think it is, if that's a Monday, the Gateway Award, the Gators are getting together, and anyone else, I guess, who's interested to kind of debrief the last one, the last rec ball. And I think certainly we'll make sure Joan's there, I'll be there, and
Okay, good.
we'll get a good dialogue going.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that.
And I
Mr.
think-
Mayor, I was also at that first recognition ball, but I was a volunteer.
But you were there.
I was
Good. Yeah, you could capture the
Yeah.
feeling of it, yes.
I think we've been to all of them as far as I can recall.
Yeah, same here. Okay, that would conclude my report. Any other thoughts for future agenda items?
Mr. Mayor, I had one. Last month, the OSETs had a dialogue about the low-hanging fruit for the Climate Action Plan, and I think the manager did a good job of summarizing what those 3 or 4 items were. My question is, how do we go from there? What's the next step? Do we bring it back to council to kind of review and give our blessing, and or what? So.
It's a good question, and I don't have what they talked about at the memory of my fingertips. So let me go back and look at my notes and see if I can distill what a report back to council might be.
Yeah, I'm thinking, they came up with good ideas. I'm assuming the next step is to bring it to us, either in a report by them or a staff report by staff, or somehow so that we can review and comment, add, subtract, critique, whatever, and then give direction back so that they have their marching orders. So,
Yeah, I think we may, I think we may start with kind of a report to council and then not necessarily a city council item, but we'll send a report out to the council and then you all can give me some feedback and figure out what kind of item to bring back if we need to.
okay. Again, I think you gave us a little summary, that would be a great starting point.
Okay.
Okay, anything further from council?
No, sir.
No, all right, well, very good. Well, thank you all. We have concluded our work for the evening. We are now adjourned. Thank you.
American Canyon.